just so thankful. We're just so thankful for this day. We're just so thankful that we can come together. And for this agenda, we pray for all of those who are impacted by the fires. We pray for all of those who are impacted by the smoke. We pray for all of those who are still impacted by the COVID and the other diseases that are airborne. We ask that you just continue to take that negative energy up into the atmosphere so that it can dissipate up there and give us the teachings that we need through our mind, through our heart, through our spirit, so that we can restore our mother, restore our mountains, restore our rivers, restore our farmlands, restore our grazing lands, so that we can be restored as a people. And we just continue to pray for this and give us that guidance, that humility, that integrity that we need so our children can look up to us and see that there's hope in this world, so that they can see and know that they're loved, that they're cherished, and will continue to walk in that beauty way. And I'll say this all with respect and all with kindness, all with consideration. Thinking of all of the lessons that we've learned for all of those who we lost, but we just want to restore it and put it in a beautiful way. So who's gonna know his sleep, who's gonna know his sleep, who's gonna know his sleep, who's gonna know his sleep. We just want to be blessed. But yeah, Chair, thank you.
Chair Henio, I believe we're ready to start the meeting.
Together with Peggy is Elmer.
Okay. All right, Yate finishes. Ramona, can you note that he's on the call, please?
Michaela, نزلنا فتنين زني باكي هلا دي بيني بيه. سيباكي هلا كهلا. Doesn't that Elmer Kidige Kehla? Thank you for joining our meeting. We are next on our agenda is recognizing guests and visiting officials. And hold on. Vice Chair on Budget Finance. And I'm also committed to my chapter meeting at Tohachilele. It's kind of playing tag with both phones, but in the meantime, let's move on. So with this, our committee, Budget Finance Committee, and we might have some new listeners that are listening in. They're wondering who's part of the Budget Finance Committee. So with this introduction, starting with Delegate Jimmy Yeller here. He's to the
Chair, Chairman, Budget Finance Committee, Honorable Henry, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Jimmy Yeller here. Never just about it based on each like a chapter house, a banner sunny 15 of Black Mesa. That was the first layback about hot on opinion or studied hope well. Out on the title joint or hard drug. I don't know, Senate for Hanan, Senator, Tory University, say that it was going to oh, yeah, happy July 4th, Saturday completed. We have a very good July 4th. Yeah, I saw kite all you, I saw kite. Here, one thing you said, there was a little talk here in the house. Once all is still Chairman Henio, thank you.
You get less than that, Jimmy here. Not so just a kudo. Delegate Amber Kanasakari.
I think Sorry, Chair, I muted myself. Kia ani nesle do the Lagana Buses team, the Viking people, do Destiny Deshache, do the Lagana Deshanala, the Irish people. So say Amber, Kenneth Bacardi, Yadisia Hasoy, then on the committee, I represent the Northern Agency, but my district is Sheep Springs, Sugar Hill, Solina, Sanofi, Red Valley, Cove, Gadiai, the Quabato. Also the chair of the Sexual Assault Prevention Subcommittee. And as delegates, we represent all of our relatives here within the Four Sacred Mountains, our families and our children who are working and going to school in urban areas, and our military families who are living abroad. So thank you very much, Chair.
Delegate Nathaniel Brown.
Yate, Budget and Finance Committee members, the chair and vice chair, and Sitsu. Thank you, Ramona Nelson, Shima, Miss Peggy Nakai, to speaker staff, and to all our staff listening and our guests. Good morning. My name is Nathaniel Brown, and my topa hunch no a look out Bashis Chin, Kiani Dashache, Adot Dashinala. I was elected by the three communities of Chimbito, Danahotso, Twidanishe, multiple committees, and thank you everyone who celebrated our indigenous warriors out there who continue to fight yesterday and reclaiming our land on Navajo and really exerting our true sovereignty. Yeah,
Delegate Nathaniel Brown. Delegate Elmer P. Begay.
Yeah, Shitsilla, members of the Budget and Finance Committee, though. Aros Digital, Aros Chewedo, Aros Digital, staff. Aros Isla Hido, Skados Dinner. She, I don't understand us as a constable. She was sit at Jenny Dashichi, or she doesn't call Banashate. To the doctor, I'm not put this doctor.com. I don't get team, Tisto, I don't go hardly in the wells. I don't do to be called.
I launched that Delegate Elmer P. Begay. Done 3,000 Zini. Could I say Jamie Hino, she's there. The Tlotchende Nasha. I Bishmas and a bunch of other 18 little children. Is soft Tojile, a patratisha. I don't have specially instrument to the Chini, but she's saying. It should say that too much organizationally that other anything that has to see the Benidi, other chair the Budget and Finance Committee, other Natea Connect Johnny Co. Only staff on the kind of explain like kick off legislative advisor and legislative reporter. So Ms. Peggy Nakai, analogy.
Yeah, Chair and members of the Budget and Finance Committee, Shay Peggy Nakai and Shea, Legislative Advisor, Dashajinedo, Budget and Finance Committee, Bishnashnish, State Task Force of Bishnashnish, Beshajinin Shlido, Halsoy, Bashashin, Twitchini, Dashachedo, Tachini, Dashanella, Lake in Hojonde, Nasha, Eastern Navajo. Good morning.
Thank you, Peggy. Ramona?
Yes, good morning, Chairman and Budget and Finance Committee members. My name is Ramona Nelson. And Legislative Assistant to the Budget and Finance Committee. Thank you.
Today, our staff for the Budget and Finance Committee. So with this, today is the 24th Navajo Nation Council. Session that is Kodoi Bahutisha. Based on that is 24th Navajo Nation Council. Denita. So that Nasodo. Navajo Nation Executive Branch President Nez and Vice President Lizer. Representative, is there a representative on the line? Office of the President and the Vice President? Okay, Tenita. Don't call. I just seen President Nez loves Opa, so going to his office. But let's move forward to Navajo Nation Judicial Branch. Madam Chief Justice Joanne Jane. Navajo Nation Judicial Branch. Is there a representative on the line? So let's move forward to Office of the Speaker, Navajo Nation Legislative Branch, Speaker Damon, representative staff. Office of the Speaker, Speaker Damon. So let's move forward to Navajo Nation chapter governments. There are representatives from the Navajo Nation chapter governments on the line. Okay, with that, let's move forward to the Navajo Nation Office of Legislative Services, Legislative Council, Legislative Council. Is there a representative from the Legislative Council?
Good morning, Chairman Henyo. I am Loya Khanalachni Henderson with Office of Legislative Council. I will be covering this committee hearing today. Thank you and good morning to all.
Magdashina, good morning. Thank you for being with us on the call. Navajo Nation Department of Justice.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. This is Mel Rodas from the Tax and Finance Unit of DOJ. Thank you.
Hey, good morning, Mr. Rodas. Thank you for being on the call. With that, are there any Navajo Nation programs, managers, division directors on the line? Yeah.
Mr. Chair, this is Dominic Bial, OMB.
Thank you, Mr. Dominic Bial, for being with us this morning. Office of Management and Budget. Office of the Controller, Sean.
Good morning, everybody. This is Gerald. I'm here for the Office of the Controller. Thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Gerald Shirley. Thank you for being on the call. Okay, let's move towards our agenda right now. We do have an agenda, proposed agenda before us. And Peggy, if you'd read the agenda into the record for us, please.
This is the proposed agenda for the Budget and Finance Committee of the Navajo Nation Council, July 5th, 2022. It's a regular meeting. I'm hoping everybody can hear me. Presiding is Jamie Henio, Chairperson, Raymond Place via Telecommun, Window Rock, Navajo Nation. call the meeting to order. The roll call, the invocation. 2, recognize guests and visiting officials. 3, review and adopt the agenda. 4, review and adopt the journal, June 7th, 2022. We have a journal. And then 5, receive reports, USDA NRCS funding opportunities for agricultural producers and tribal governments, presented by Keisha Tatum, State Conservationist, Phoenix Office, USDA. B, FRF update, presented by Tom Platero, Director, Fiscal Recovery Fund Office. First bullet is CJY 4121 FRF directives. C, update on the FY23 budget process, presented by Dominic Biel, Director, Office of Management and Budget. D, update on the ARPA Hardship Assistance Program, presented by Elizabeth Begay, Interim Controller, Office of the Controller. 6, old business none. 7, new business. A, legislation number 0075-22. B, legislation number 0103-22. And then C, scheduling a joint meeting with the Resources and Development Committee related to the U.S. Treasury funding for housing and the emergency rental assistance funding discussion with the Navajo Housing Authority. 8, close of the session, written announcements, adjournment. The next meeting is July 12th, 2022.
Thank you for that reading. With this, is there a motion to accept the agenda as read?
This is Delegate Brown, no motion.
Delegate Nathaniel Brown, motion. Is there a second?
Delegate Yellowhair.
Delegate Jimmy Yellowhair, second. So we do have a motion and second on the floor. And with this, the floor is open for any questions, comments on the agenda.
Chair, this is Delegate Cardi. Oh, go to Delegate Yellowhair.
I'm sorry. Delegate Yellowhair there. Apologies.
That is to the chairman. Thank you very much. Honorable Crowley. See, let's talk about this. Depends on 24 rules. There's a few things on the consent. I'd like to have under new business legislation. There's 2 legislation. I don't know if there's one that pertains to others, A, B, and C. That it said that these things, and then here at coordination at Masini Bed, I pay it out of Conason. So that's it. I'd like to request to respect the 4 rules. It don't have a hospital. Thank you, Chairman.
So, are you motioning to amendment number 1 to go to new business items first, add on the reports? Amendment 1 by Yonskia.
I'm sorry, confused. To the Chairman. That's my motion.
For that motion. So we have a motion on the floor. Delegate Jimmy Yellowhair to go to new business items 7, A, B, and C first, and then thereafter to back to the reports. Sorry, motion is there a second? Is there a second? Okay, with that, let's move to going. Is there a second going once? Motion on the floor, amendment number 1. Is there a second going twice? Okay, with a motion for amendment number 1, go to new business items first, and then after reports. There's a second going 3 times. So with that, let's go back. The floor is open, Mac, for additions, deletions, or On the amendment, Shinada, Delegate Amber Kanasakari.
Yes, thank you, Chair, committee members. We did receive a text inquiring about the Navajo Nation Veterans Administration budget. Chair, if I'm in order, my understanding that they wanted to report to the committee. If I could make that amendment, Chair, and before you recognize that motion, I would want to get some information. I understand acting controller not on the line, which I think that should be addressed in terms of who should be on the line for this committee meeting. But in terms of upcoming tribal consultations, there is a consultation on the Community Reinvestment Act, and I'm not sure, Chair, what executive program would provide that information to this committee so that we could provide our response to the rulemaking that is currently in place. So I have that question and I'll make that motion. Thank you, Chair.
On your question, Iggy, regarding the Community Reinvestment Act, and so therefore we'll have our staff reach out. I'll contact speaker staff to get the information for the committee here, and then at the same time, which office's program is responsible for the oversight. Also, yes, I do agree with the Navajo Nation controller being online with the committee, and so hopefully she's on the line right now. With this motion number one, amendment number one, is to add a report to item 5 at the last, I believe, E. Navajo Nation Veterans Administration, Mr. Jim Zwerline has been requesting to report to the committee. And therefore, there's a motion for amendment number 1 to add a report. Is there a second?
Second, Delegate
Delegate Elmer P. Begay. Second. So with that, there's a motion and a second. Any questions, comments on amendment number 1? Then I'll look forward to roll call vote to accept amendment number 1. Ramona?
Yes, Chairman. Amendment number 1, vote. Honorable Raymond Smith Jr., how do you vote? Honorable Raymond Smith Jr., how do you vote? Oh, I'm sorry, he's excused.
Yes, he's excused.
Sorry. Honorable Jimmy Yellowhair, how do you vote?
I'll vote green. Thank you.
Thank you. Honorable Jimmy Yellowhair votes green. Honorable Amber Kines Bakrati, how do you vote?
Delegate Carter votes.
Thank you, Shadeja. Honorable Amber Kines Bakrati votes green. Honorable Nathaniel Brown, how do you vote?
Delegate Brown votes green.
Thank you. Honorable Nathaniel Brown votes green. Honorable Elmer P. Begay, how do you vote?
I'll vote green.
Thank you. Honorable Elmer P. Begay votes green. Chairman, we have 4 members voting in the affirmative, 0 opposing, 1 member excused, and chairman not voting. Chairman?
Thank you for that roll call vote. And with that, we do have amendment number 1 as a due pass. 4 in favor, 0 opposed, chair not voting. That back to the main motion. Any questions, comments on the main motion? If there are no questions or comments on the main motion, with 1 amendment to add a report, roll call vote to accept the agenda main motion. Ramona?
Yes, Chairman, roll call vote on accepting the agenda. Honorable Jimmy Yellowhair, how do you vote? Honorable Jimmy Yellowhair, how do you vote?
I'll vote green. Thank you.
Thank you. Honorable Jimmy Yell votes green. Honorable Amber Kenneth Bakari, how do you vote?
Shadows Delegate Crotty votes green. Thank you.
Thank you, Shadeja. Honorable Amber Kenneth Bakari votes green. Honorable Nathaniel Brown, how do you vote?
Delegate Brown votes green.
Thank you. Honorable Nathaniel Brown votes green. Honorable Elmer P. Begay, how do you vote?
Trudeau, vote green.
Thank you. Honorable Elmer P. Begay votes green. Chairman, we have 4 members voting in the affirmative, 0 opposing, and Chairman not voting. Chairman?
Okay, thank you. 4 in favor, 0 opposed, Chair not voting. We have accepted our agenda with 1 amendment. Thank you. Let's move forward on the agenda. Next item on the agenda is journals. Excuse me, journals. Are there any journals, Ramona?
Yes, Chairman, the journal for June 7, 2022.
Kashina, thank you. With that, there is one journal that we need to, the committee needs to address. So with that, we have one journal for, what was the date, Ramona?
I'm sorry, those.
Begay.
The journal was for June 7, 2022, Chairman, and that journal was emailed out to the members, Chairman.
Yeah, no, thank you. June 7th, 2022, and they were emailed out prior. So is there a motion to accept the journal? Delegate Begay, motion. Motion by Delegate Elmer P. Begay. Is there a second?
Second, Delegate Crotty.
We do have a motion and a second. Motion by Delegate Elmer P. Begay, second by Delegate Amber Kenneth Bakari. With that, any questions, comments on the journal? If there are no questions, I'll call for the question to accept the journal. Ramona, roll call vote.
Yes, Chairman, roll call vote for approving the journals. Honorable Jimmy Yell here, how do you vote? Honorable Jimmy Yellow Hair, how do you vote?
I'll vote green. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Honorable Jimmy Yellow Hair votes green. Honorable Amber Kenneth Crotty, how do you vote?
This is Delegate Crotty, and I vote green. Thank you.
Thank you. Honorable Amber Kenneth Crotty votes green. Honorable Nathaniel Brown, how do you vote?
Delegate Brown votes green.
Thank you. Honorable Nathaniel Brown votes green. Honorable Elmer P. Begay, how do you vote?
Vote green.
Thank you. Honorable Elmer P. Begay votes green. Chairman, we have 4 members voting in the affirmative, 0 opposing. Chairman not voting. Chairman?
Thank you. 4 in favor, 0 opposed. Chair not voting. We have accepted our journal for June 7th, 2022. With that, moving forward on our agenda, next item is receiving reports. Item A. Peggy, who's up on item A? I need to get inside so I can open my computer. I'm still sitting in the parking lot here. Peggy?
Chair, can I help you?
Yes, who's item A on our report?
For item A is the USDA NRCS funding opportunities for agricultural producers and tribal governments. And that's presented by Keisha Tatum, State Conservationist, Phoenix Office, USDA. Chair.
Like to see that. Thank you, Peggy. So the first item is the report from USDA. Ms. Tatum, are you on the line?
Yes, I am, and thank you, Chairman Henio.
Kashina, thank you for being on the call, and you have the floor to present your report to the Budget and Finance Committee.
Thank you, and Yate, to the Budget and Finance Committee and all the delegates and guests here on the call today. I'm Keisha Tatum, State Conservationist with USDA Natural Resources Conservation Service. And I do have a presentation, so I'll be sharing my slides. If you give me one moment. Okay, so everyone should be able to see a full screen now of the program briefing, and I do understand that there are some on the phone, so I'll do my best to also try to describe as best I can for those that can't actually see the slides. And a copy of it was also sent, so some of the committee members may also have a hard copy or an electronic copy of the presentation. So again, thank you for the opportunity to come before you. And I'm going to jump right in. I was asked to give a presentation on funding opportunities for producers and tribal governments, and I'm glad it's both of those things. I'm going to have to I'm going to present some information about some challenges as it relates to being able to service both individuals and the tribe specific to Navajo Nation. And so I'm going to jump right into the presentation and give a little bit of an overview of the Natural Resources Conservation Service. We are one of the 17 agencies of the U.S. Department of Agriculture. And my title as State Conservationist, I manage all of the operations of all of our offices within the boundary of Arizona and Big Navajo. And it's going to be very important for those that may represent the Eastern Agency. Much of what I'm going to present today does not apply to the Eastern Agency. The State Conservationist in New Mexico provides those services, and that staff in New Mexico provides services to those areas in the Eastern Agency. But all of Big Navajo, even the areas in Utah and New Mexico, are serviced by Arizona NRCS. So just to kind of give a disclaimer for those in the Eastern Agency that may have questions. And so a little bit about who we are and our mission. We're focused on improving the health of the nation's natural resources while sustaining and enhancing the productivity of American agriculture. We do believe that both production and a healthy environment, ag production and a healthy environment can go hand in hand. And so that's what we attempt to promote. We work specifically with land users to protect and improve those natural resources on private and tribal lands. Our statutory authority is very specific to private land. And then, of course, as part of our responsibilities as a federal agency with trust responsibilities, we also service all of the the federally recognized tribes. And there are some instances where we will use our funds on federal lands, such as lands managed by Forest Service or BLM, but that's only when a producer is part of his operation in conjunction with his private land. So we do not manage per se lands themselves, but we assist those land users that manage lands. And we take a science-based conservation planning process to identify resource concerns, develop alternatives to address those problems, and then we recommend conservation practices or conservation systems to address those issues. And then we have financial assistance programs authorized by Congress to help defray some of the costs to install those practices or systems that we recommended. So before I jump into what kind of funding and programs we have, I want to maybe take a step back and share with you some information that I previously shared with the Tribal Council back in 2015. I made a presentation to, at that time, the CHSN committee and talked a little bit about our work and what we've done on Navajo Nation since the inception of our financial assistance programs, which really started in the 1996 Farm Bill. And all of our authorities pretty much come from the Farm Bill. So every 5 years, those authorities are updated, they may change, but for the most part, since 1996, we've been providing the actual financial assistance programs. Prior to that, a lot of our work was just technical assistance, but we really got an opportunity to expand our financial support for those producers in 1996. But in 2015, I presented to the CSN committee some specific challenges as it relates to being able to spend our funds on Navajo Nation. And at that time, we had low participation in the programs. The average, we had about 6 applications per year for all of Navajo. And then in the state, we averaged about 18. And then for the conservation, and this is going to be specific to our environmental quality incentives program. And I'll talk a little bit about the program shortly. But when we did get what we call equip contracts, we had a low percentage of being able to install those practices. So we would get applicants, producers, farmers and ranchers on the reservation come in, apply for support from us. We would work with them, write a conservation plan, recommend practices, get them in a contract. We've obligated the money to that individual producer. And then we found that we weren't able to really bring it on home and get those practices on the ground. And our installation rate was very low on Navajo. It was 24% compared to 67% installation rate on other reservations. I'm sorry. Okay.
We apologize. Staff, okay. Can you please mute?
Okay, thank you. So, and then we had quite a few contracts. As of course, if we weren't installing them, eventually we would get to a point where they had to be canceled or terminated. And on Navajo, that was a 31% rate compared to on other tribes, we're at 5%. So it became a concern. And so that's why we brought it to, at that time, the CSN committee. We met with tribal officials. We met with, even met with the president, had several meetings back at that time, BIA, several groups, lots and lots of meetings. And so since the 96 Farm Bill, about 50 million had been obligated to tribes at that time. And about 10 million of that 50 million was to Navajo Nation, but only 43% of those funds actually got paid out to the producers that was in those contracts. And that was a drastic change from what we had done on other reservations where that payment percentage was very high at 96%. So it was a concern for us, and we were trying to see what could we do. There were some challenges both on NRCS's side and the nation side on improving those issues. And then we had some relationship issues. There was quite a bit of confusion about our government, the government relationship, and not necessarily the confusion about what government to government relationship or responsibilities are, but by nature of just, and I don't think I have to tell the council delegates this. I think you guys are very aware, especially in comparison to other tribal nations, just that Navajo is very large and has lots of moving parts as it relates to tribal governments with the larger central government chapters and many other units. It was very difficult to kind of navigate who was the decision maker. And then there were times where the natural resource priorities of the nation didn't align with the soil and water conservation districts, which are technically units of the nation that USDA asked the nation to create back in the 80s. And they helped set the priorities, but they didn't always align with what the nation wanted. And just a little bit of background, NRCS programs, the way we administer and rank how we administer our funds is based upon local priorities being developed. And so off-reservation soil and water conservation districts or conservation districts do that work. And back in the 80s, we kind of asked tribes to create conservation districts, adding to the structure of the government the tribes already had. So Navajo did create those soil and water conservation districts, and we had worked with them for many, many years, but we found over time that there may not have been a connection between those soil and water conservation districts and the nation and its priorities. So just giving you a background of what kind of caused some of the the issues with getting the funding. Actually, the point is to get the funding on the ground. So we had multiple jurisdictional boundaries between BIA, chapters, grazing districts, and just quite a few issues in our relationship. One of which also is being very difficult to maintain office space on the reservation. At one time, we had as many as 5 offices on the reservation. And as you'll see shortly on our map, we're down to just 2 offices. And so that also created challenges for us. And it became a issue of who does what. And we started trying to keep up with all the moving parts and who we should be talking to, and the bigger question was, who makes the decision? The many departments on Navajo Nation, all the federal agencies that, of course, want to support Navajo Nation, but we may not have always been in a coordinated effort. And then we began to be approached by other groups, Water Users Association, watershed groups, and even nonprofits like Intertribal Ag Council, the Indian Nations Conservation Alliance, and First Nations. So after several meetings at that time, there was some direction from the council, or from the CSN committee, to work with various departments and the BIA, and we had a lot of meetings. But at the end, after several meetings, we just couldn't come to any final decision, or there was no final decision on what the priorities would be, what the processes would be, or how the funding would be administered. So trying to keep in line with my responsibilities to still service the nation, I just made a decision. I just made a decision. And that decision was that I was going to commit $1 million in EQIP funds. And EQIP is our program, Environmental Quality Incentives Program, each year to the applications we receive from on Navajo Nation. And then those funds were to be split 80-20. So 80% of those funds were supposed to go to large scale tribal projects, and 20% of those funds were to go to individual projects for producers. Because the challenge we found with individual producers, and I think that was the question I was asked, to what funding is available for individual producers and what kind of funding is available for the tribe itself. So the challenge we found with the individual producers, of course, it took some time to kind of manage those contracts, but I think I take it as we were in our CS, and we'll take responsibility for this. We were trying to use our model of how we work off reservation and trying to apply it on Navajo Nation. We have since learned, of course, culturally, that might not have been the best way to manage that and do that, and that we needed to take maybe a more communal approach, because it was just a lot of challenges for those individual producers, whether it was permits, grazing permits, getting through past a farm board, and just several things. Did they need permission from the chapter? There were just a lot of issues. And then with the large scale tribal projects, it was very much easier to do direct contracts with Navajo Nation. Once we kind of figured out who was going to have signature authority, and that ended up being the president. But I think I would say the challenge with those larger scale projects was just prioritizing which project needed to be done. Was it a fish and wildlife project? Was it an agriculture project? It became because we never came up with a process of how we're going to prioritize, that became a challenge. So although I made this decision, we still ran into some issues, even with the $1 million, and you'll see that right now. So where we are now and what happened with the funding and how things have been funded. So 2015 was when I gave the report from the CSN committee, and so I wanted to kind of take the presentation today from that point moving forward. As you can see, in 2017 was when I made the commitment of the $1 million a year. And so we allocated, meaning we set aside those funds for Navajo Nation. And the first year was great. We actually spent a little bit more. We obligated a little bit more than that, and went over the $1 million. And that's probably because the way we do funding, it could have been that another tribe didn't spend the funds on their reservation and I was able to move it over. But as you can see, that first year was the only year that we actually spent the $1 million. So in 2018 of the 1 million, we only obligated 329,000. Of course, in 2019, it was only 266,000. 2020 was drastically less, and that's not surprising. That's when COVID kind of happened. And so, you know, a lot of things changed in 2020 as it relates to our operations on the reservation, and our staff just kind of, we weren't really out during that year. It picked up a little bit in 2021 and 2022, but still not ever reaching the 300,000 mark. So that $1 million commitment, I made adjustments to that over those years when it looked like we knew we couldn't spend those funds. And although we had those issues, we still worked on what we thought the other challenges were. So we did see some good things happen in this since 2015. So we're still only averaging about 6 applications per year, but we definitely have increased our payment rate. So what used to be 43% of the funds got on the ground, now we're up to 75% of the funds are actually being dispersed out of those contracts. And the cancellation rate decreased from 31% to 18%. So we have some good things that are happening. I think we're looking at contracts a little bit more critically now. We're having more engagement with the producer. We may not have as many contracts because I think we're just trying to be better with what we go into a contract, and so that we don't confuse the producers out there on the ground making promises about things that we can't keep. And we found that was some of the issues too. There was a lot of misconceptions about the programs. In 2019, we met with President Nez in consultation, and there were some other tribal officials there, even a couple of council delegates. We talked about the office space issue and the possibility of Navajo Nation having government space available. President Ned specifically asked us to work with the Division of Natural Resources on our processes, and that we were going to hold off on our outreach efforts until some of those processes could be finalized, because what we found is that our staff was out going to chapter meetings and events around the reservation, telling them about our programs, but then we didn't have these processes in place so that people could actually apply and be successful in the programs. And that just frustrated people a little bit more. And then President Nez also asked us to do a little bit more collaboration with BIA and the Corps engineers, in which we, of course, started doing some of that. But of course, I don't have to tell you guys, in 2020, all of that halted when COVID happened. So we have not gotten to a place where we're really satisfied with any of our processes, and we started to kind of have some of those conversations again now. But of course, all that got put on hold back in 2020. And since that time, we reorganized the entire Arizona NRCS reorganized. And we have we're kind of looking at Navajo. It's actually the Hopi and Navajo team together. So team 2, we're down to 2 offices, as I mentioned, one in Chinle and one in St. Michael's. We really think we need an office on the western side of the reservation. We just don't have coverage over there. We have a staff person that is working remotely from their home out of Dilcon. But still, this is, 17 million acres is a lot of land to cover. And we now have about 5 folks working on the reservation. And Triva Henio is the new team leader. We just hired her. I don't even think it's been a whole year now, and you'll be meeting her shortly. And then we have staff in the Chinle and St. Michael's offices. We still don't know who does what, so this slide remains. We're still working on who makes decisions, who makes calls, how do federal agencies work together. It becomes a little bit of a challenge, but we're working on it, and we hope that the council, as well as the executive branch, can continue to give us guidance on who does what. I think one of the bigger challenges, and I'll give you an example, can we go into contracts with chapters? So that is a question that we don't have an answer to. Meaning, can we go into can chapters go into contracts with us? And if so, do we classify them as a unit of Navajo Nation? And if so, can they use the tribe's Sams and Duns number? If there are a lot of like little intricate details that prevent the ability for us to go into contracts with maybe some of these units, because some of those questions aren't answered. Because it's kind of a different answer. Some folks, I've been told yes, if they're a certified chapter. I've been told no, they can't use the Sams and Duns number. And we just haven't gotten a for sure answer to some of these issues. And then I'm going to briefly just talk about what our programs and services are. I've already said that conservation planning is the focus of what we do. So the first thing NRCS is we're a technical agency. We provide technical support to land users that are farmers and ranchers and forest land users, specifically on how to improve their natural resources. And we have a process for that conservation planning technical assistance. And then our financial assistance, as I said, is authorized by the Farm Bill. They're not grants. Instead, we go into contracts. The producer or the entity would install the practices according to our designs and our standards and specifications, and then we reimburse them a portion of those costs that they had associated with installing it. Now, we have a provision in the Farm Bill where we're allowed to do advance payments, particularly for social disadvantage, which Native Americans fall into that category, and we're able to do a percentage of the contract as an advance payment. So there is an opportunity for that for those that may have issues there. And then, as you can see, this is a long list. We have lots of programs. The technical assistance is, CTA, our technical assistance is our staff providing the technical support. We have a watershed program, and we do have some work that's happening on the reservation related to watersheds. We're doing large, very large scale projects. You may, I don't know if most of you may be familiar with Acai Lake, and how all of that got set up years ago was through an NRCS watershed project that resulted in the dam being built, the recreation area, the irrigation related to the downstream producers. All of that was part of our watershed program. Environmental Quality Census program, which is the biggest program we have as far as funding, and that's the one that most people know about, is the Fix It program. There's a natural resource issue, and we can install practices to fix that natural resource issue: soil erosion, distribution of your water for livestock. The stewardship program is a program for those that are already good stewards, and they can get a payment for their great stewardship if they want to do something a little bit extra. We have an easement program, a regional conservation partnership program, which we do have a project on in the nation right now. And the regional conservation partnership program allows NRCS to use all the authorities above that, all of those ones above, in a partnership effort with an entity that says, I have some cash too, and we have, let's say, a $10 million project. We have $6 million ready to go, and we may need $4 million more to really do this project. And so it's a leveraging program with a partner to help address some large scale natural resource issues. Emergency watershed program is for when there's an emergency like a fire or a flood, and there may be some natural resource issues that occur after that. Emergency being a key word. When it happens, we have to know almost immediately after the event, within a few days, and then we kind of move rather quickly to go get funding. I don't have set funding for that. We have to go and request the funding, but the process does move quickly in addressing some issues related to an natural emergency issue. And in Arizona, that's primarily related to fires, floods, and floods that occur after an area has been burned. So we may have had the fire in one year, and then the next year the monsoon comes and, of course, washes mountains and things away. And that event, that flood event, is even considered, even though it was originally from the fire, that's considered eligible. National Resources Inventory, where we're evaluating the entire country and its land use. This is now we do some research. This is now getting into our research kind of work. Plant Material Center, Soil Survey Program, and then we also have the Snow Survey. And here are the projects that are currently going on right now on Navajo Nation. We have a regional conservation partnership program for a watershed plan on both Upper and Lower Black Creek. There are currently 24 active contracts for EQIP. For watersheds, other than the RCPP, Upper and Lower Black Creek, there is a general watershed project that's being considered. It's not even to the application, but there's discussions with various groups up in the San Juan watershed, and Navajo EPA is part of that. We currently have a request into Navajo Nation to collect data on 10 sites for our National Resources Inventory. Soil Survey, all of Navajo Nation has been mapped, and we are waiting on the ecological site descriptions to be finalized. That's the last part of the Soil Survey, but the entire Navajo Nation has been mapped, and you guys have access to that, to those studies. And then Snow Survey is an ongoing activity, and we have 9 sites on the nation, of which Navajo Nation also assists us with operating. So that is my presentation. I would love to introduce you all to Treva Henio. She is the team leader that we've hired to lead the team up on Navajo, and she's also been assigned the designation as a tribal liaison for Navajo Nation. And so I don't mind anyone contacting me or Laverne, our state tribal liaison, but you have someone right there now that is considered a liaison for any time there is a need for anything on the nation. And so with that, that is the conclusion of my presentation. And I don't know if there are specific questions that I need to answer, but I'll hand it back over to the chairman. And Treva's now, thank you, Treva. She's on camera now to just make sure everyone kind of gets to see Treva. And she's definitely available to service you. And she may help me answer some of these questions.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Ms. Tatum, for the report and information to the Budget and Finance Committee. With this, committee members, is there a motion to accept the report?
Delegate Brown, no motion.
Delegate Nathaniel Brown, motion. Is there a second?
Delegate Yellowhair.
Delegate Jimmy Yellowhair, second. So we do have a motion and a second to accept the report. Therefore, the floor is now open for questions or comments for our presenters. And welcome, Ms. Henio, to the Budget and Finance Committee meeting. So with this, committee members, questions, comments?
This is Delegate Brown.
Delegate Nathaniel Brown, you have the floor.
Thank you, Ms. Tatum, for your presentation. Very insightful and great to meet you, Ms. Treva Henio. Chair, maybe in a little bit we'll give, actually right now, Chair, can we give some time to Ms. Treva Henio to introduce herself to us, the Budget and Finance Committee, and after that I will have some questions.
Hold on, please, Ms. Henio. Here, Delegate Nathaniel Brown, for your request. And then as soon as the introduction has taken place, then I will come back to you for a follow-up. So Ms. Henio, welcome. I have the floor. Introduce yourself to the Budget and Finance Committee.
Ms. Tatum, introduces she a team leader in St. Michael's and Chinle Field offices for Big Navajo. Ado initially ani nishlo had and bashish chain. Nakadin eto hetlin etashuche. Ado twadajin etashnala. Ado Nahadeshki, New Mexico, that Nasha, Eastern Navajo Agency there. And Lower, a case in the little tribes, it didn't meet in Navajo Nation, though our neighboring tribes, which is the Hopi tribe and the San Juan Southern Paiute tribe, which are able to provide services for them. And I have 3 master planners on board with me, and 1 engineering technician that's situated in Chun-Li field office. Thank you for having me.
Kashina Kiala, for introducing yourself, Ms. Henyo, to the committee. With this, I'll defer back to the Budget and Finance Committee. Shinada, Delegate Nathaniel Brown.
Oh yeah, again, thank you, Ms. Triva Henio, and to Budget and Finance Committee members, colleagues. Thank you. Really good presentation. I know that before Soil and Water Conservation, I believe NRCS had an office in Kayenta. And if I could just follow up with you, was it just because that we could not find staff to get hired? Is my first question. The other part is the Kayenta Diversion Dam. We have completed our floodplain study, the 100-year. I don't know if the 500-year was done, but the 100-year was done from Kayenta, the diversion dam, the Laguna Wash that goes down to Denahuto. So floodplain study was done there. With a diversion dam in Kayenta, do you have any recommendations on where we can look for funds to replace the diversion dam? Again, so the Army Corps of Engineers have done their work, and I believe we've met some of your team there as well in Kayenta, maybe twice. So we're still looking for fundings to replace that. And I saw that there is an emergency funding for water, but my understanding is that usually is within the first 30 days after the flood happens or when a dam breaks. I believe that that's when we still had the NRCS office in Kayenta, but we've lost that opportunity. But now we've done our study and research, and we do have those cost estimates, and they range from like 5 million to, I believe, up to 20 million, depending on what type we would. And yesterday, I've met with some individuals, and our community is kind of they were saying, you know what? Why are we waiting for these federal agencies and Navajo Nation? Why can't we just replace some of our dam, our bridges? I think this waiting on Navajo and federal agencies have us very, it's irritating, and life continues. We see the water that continues to go by and in this drought, and we would like to use a lot of that water from the dam. So if you can also recommend me, besides Ms. Trivahenio, to someone in Western Agency, also share his information with me, who that person in Western, you mentioned that they are working remotely. So I'm really interested in that. And then the next big thing is, how can we work together with other organizations, tap into some federal dollars? I'm not sure if specifically if the Biden administration has released some funds to Indian country for more agriculture. And when I speak about these, when they become grants or competitive grants, federal government also puts so many layers of bureaucracy and red tape on this, including matching funds, which I think the federal government almost deliberately does this. It seems like they deliberately do this for us as indigenous native tribes, Navajo tribe, to fail. If we can just gut a lot of these not policies, but even matching funds, if we can do away with that, that would be great. I know like some philanthropy organization has done that with some certain natural conservation organizations. So if we can look at creative ways to make these funds available to these small communities. I'm glad that you are very familiar with our grazing official and the complexities on Navajo with with just so many red tape right there. And I can understand, and I think that's our job as legislatures. If we can point, and you are right that I'm glad you also brought up the point where we don't know who to answer or communicate with. Is it the chapters? Is it the council? Is it the president? Is it the water resource department? So that is something that we as council need to work on. We need to make a map of, okay, if it's water in Western Agency, contact this person, this office, and this is who you should work with, and they would have the authority. So I'm really glad that you brought that up. And it is up to this administration. And since you've met with the NES administration, I'm surprised that they have not made those recommendations or try to fix any of these. His job is really to help navigate a lot of these with the division directors, but we'll work on that from our end. But water is very important. Any way to have farming, bringing more water to our, and my final point would be, by any chance, I've been asking for the study. I don't know if you did the study on Black Mesa, how much water was extracted during the coal mining the past 40 years, 50 years on Black Mesa. I know that our aquifers were tapped into, and still people are still without running water in those areas and the surrounding communities. So again, we want to bring remedy, and we want to plan for the future, looking forward another 100, 500 years for our people also. So that's what we're looking at. Your response is greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Shananta, Delegate Nathaniel Brown, for your questions. Are there any further questions, comments for our presenters, committee members?
Chair Smith?
Vice Chair Smith, you have the floor. Good morning, Vice Chair Smith. Thank you for joining us. You have the floor.
Well, thank you, Chairman, and Budget and Finance Committee members and the presenters of this important topic. Appreciate the dialogue and those that are listening on board. I kind of heard the tail end of this, but I heard that we're getting a lot of rains thus far, and we see it just running down the Arroyos and down to Rio Perco, and it's not being, dammed up to utilize. The reason why I say this is because I do take a walk back behind my place, and there's a spring, and that spring is slowly refilling the aquifer. You can see the results of that, and when it rains, it just rushes through, but when it drizzles like the way it does, then that aquifer has a chance to replenish. It has a weir there, so that weir doesn't infiltrate into the spring itself. But a long time ago, it was built by the Indian Health Services. My question is, there's a lot of these, the Navajos call it tuichwada, and that means the hand pump springs. Those hand pump springs were very vital to helping livestock owners and folks that live near the springs to, irrigate or have fresh water for themselves. And at this point in time, there's no talk of it being replenished or repaired, or some are still there to provide water. Like for instance, in Plagato, there's that one little area called Antelope Antelope Springs or Antelope Lake. There's a tuichwada there, and it has all its components there, but there's no water in it. So with this recent rains, I'm hoping that it replenished that, because I heard reports from locals there saying during the summertime there was a lot of cold water. It was refreshing to have that cold water. And I remember one of the Resource Development Committee, my older brother, he spoke about them relying on the artesian wells and springs, and they haul that. And he says he never got sick. He never got sick from any illness, and they were healthy from drinking that water and cooking with it and cleaning with it. And right now we have fluoride in it, and we have all kinds of chemicals, chlorine to kill bacteria in there. I think that's where we're getting our system's getting kind of weak. So what I'm trying to say is there any funding for these artesian wells, springs, and also the windmills? There's windmills that are kind of ignored. And the other one too is when I was talking about the arroyos and the water just rushing off and flowing off the Navajo Nation. Is there funding that we could utilize to shore up and put earthen dams? There used to be an earthen dam over in Wide Ruins area, and that held up a lot of water, but that breached, and once it breached, there's no way of capturing that water. So we're wanting to look for resources like that. We talk to safety of dams, we talk to water resources, and they're saying, well, there's this regulation, there's this funding that's not there, and repair all the reservoirs that used to be in existence. We don't have the manpower to go out there and fix these springs. We don't have the funds to do that. And that's what we rely on is, like for instance, in Wide Ruins, there's a spring that's just naturally there, and one resident that lives nearby, he walks at least maybe a half a mile to buckets and hauls that water from there, and it's a natural artesian well, and hauls it for his consumption and use. Those are the questions that I have on behalf of the USDA, and I heard NRCS. I remember NRCS really helped with the Asayat Lake. I don't know if you recall that, but they really did some reclamation and helped dredge that, I guess, the sediment in the lake and put a bridge across there. And it's still standing to this day. And those kind of improvements we really like to see, not only in our recreational lakes, but also in areas throughout the Navajo Nation. I'm sure there's a lot of areas that are in need of repairs. So that's what I want to say, Chairman. Thank you for giving me time on this, and I just want to say that we also have Vice Chair Otto So on board with us this morning, listening on this report. So, okay, if we're giving me some time, and I'm looking forward to maybe providing this location, providing information, working with resources, water resources to get these springs and windmills and reservoirs and things of that nature, if we can get them funded to ensure that we have our water system, because I know it's going to rain again because I see the clouds out here, and they're a blessing to have, and we need to capture that water. Even just putting a barrel out there, capturing the rainwater off our roof. I have a barrel out there, and I'm trying to look for another barrel, but it seems like I can't find any barrels. Maybe we could get barrels and do like what our grandmas and grandpas used to do. They used to capture that water, and it'd be backup water, and it's clean water, and it's purified through the atmosphere, and it's distilled water. Thank you for giving me time.
Vice Chair Smith, for your comments and questions. With that, I'll defer this floor back to Presenter Ms. Tatum. You have the floor for response.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I'll try to address both Delegate Brown and Vice Chair Smith's question. So if I could go first with the question about the office space, particularly in Kayenta, but I think the issue is bigger than Kayenta. So we had an office in Shiprock, we had an office in Kayenta. Years ago, we had an office in the Gap. We had an office in Dilcon at one time. And just over the years, there have been challenges with maintaining the space. We do have challenges sometimes with qualified, getting staff that meets the requirements for our positions. but that's not as big of an issue as the space itself. Getting the space meeting the requirements that we have to have as a federal facility, because it would have to meet all of those standards with in a compliance with the American with Disabilities Act, and then and other requirements. So it's been more of just securing the actual buildings and space is the challenge. And I think I mentioned that at one point in time when we met with President Nez, he had mentioned to us that I don't know if it was coming through the council, I don't know the process, but there was a consideration of maybe putting some Navajo Nation government space around the reservation. And we would be very interested in renting space from the nation if those facilities became available, because we would like to see some, it is a lot of acres to cover. So let me just say, just because we don't have those office spaces don't mean we don't still service those areas. We're still responsible for servicing all 17 million acres. So, but unfortunately, we're having to do that out of St. Michael's, Chinle, and then we do have Felix Nez, who is working remotely from his home in Dilcon. And so that's the challenge with the space. And St. Michael's at one point in time was also in jeopardy. We were having some issues with the landlord there for a period of time, but we stayed. We're fine now. We renewed the lease and we were able to stay at least for 5 more years. And I think that was maybe 2, maybe 3 years ago. So it would really we've even had issues in Chinle. And it's more of landlord issues and meeting the requirements that we have to meet. So if we can get some office space, or if there any help that the committee could do with helping us secure office space, we would be very interested in having that conversation and finding space that we could rent. And as for the diversion dam, yes, we have been engaged in the conversations with the Corps of Engineers. I haven't had a briefing from my team in a while on that. I didn't know the Corps of Engineers was done with their study. So thank you for letting me know that, because we may have some funding available for that, and we were trying to work with the Corps of Engineers to try to coordinate efforts on both sides. And it kind of speaks to even some of the questions that Vice Chair Smith had in terms of, we have this watershed program. And so the watershed program, and if I could just give you a very brief, the watershed program is what funded the Acai Lake project. So I know that came up, and I mentioned that earlier as well. And the watershed program was very popular in the 80s. And then sometime in the 90s, Congress stopped funding it. We had authorities stop funding it at a high rate. Let me just put it that way. We got funding every now and then. But in recent years, Congress has started funding that program again at an acceptable rate, at a rate that we can manage. And so within the past 3, maybe 4 years, or maybe 5 years now, that we have been getting annual appropriations for the watershed program. And that is to do large scale projects like dams, looking at the entire watershed, looking at all of the needs in the watershed. And so it could, Delegate Brown, possibly be a watershed program or project. And so let me follow up with my team on that. Like I said, we have been engaged with Corps Engineers on it, and I just haven't had a briefing on it recently. And Treva may have a little bit more information. She's a little closer to it, but we definitely will follow up with you and find out what the status of that is and get back with you. And if it is something that we can move forward in our watershed program, then we would just need to know who we engage with this is back to the question of, and who's gonna be the applicant. Is it Navajo Nation, the chapter? Those is, again, I think you talked, we do need to address some of those issues. And so I will commit to following up on the Kayenta diversion dam issue. You asked about the President Nez's administration. We did meet with President Nez and to talk about some of these processes. And he did assign Dr. Rudy Shabala. Dr. Rudy Shabala has been assigned to us as our primary point of contact. And so we almost exclusively communicate with him, but that doesn't stop other entities from communicating with us. And so we definitely keep Dr. Shabala in the loop on everything that's happening, and do not move forward with things until we have a go-ahead or an approval from him. So we did get an actual official point of contact from the NES administration, but it is still a lot of questions that still need to be answered on can we work directly with chapters? Can they enter contracts? So that's something that definitely needs some follow-up on the nation side. The Black Mesa study, I haven't heard of that. So I'm going to make myself a note. I don't think we were involved in that at all. So I'll see if that's something that we may have contributed some data to. I don't know if we contributed soils data, if that's a BIA project or not, or effort, but we can follow up on that for you to see if there was any NRCS involvement. I just don't recall that. And I kind of keep up with the projects on the nation, but it's possible that the local staff knows something about that. In relation to Vice Chairman Smith's question. So Vice Chairman Smith, all of your questions, I'm going to lump into one if I can, because what you talked about was the back to the watershed type of issues. I'm not going to say we have money for wells or springs or artesian wells or earthen dams. NRCS has funding to address a natural resource issue. And so the way we go about things is if, an issue has been identified, we look at, especially when we talk about our watershed program, we look at all the issues within a watershed. And then we have this process that we, look at studies that have been done and come up with solutions. So solutions may include developing local springs. It may include water catchment facilities. It may include dams and those kind of things. So I'm going to say maybe, and the answer is maybe for your question. Because it's about how we address the issues. And we may have other solutions. We may say, earthen dams may be a solution, but we may say, well, here's another idea, or here's another way to do it that may be more acceptable to you or the entity we're working with, and it may be more cost effective. So the answer is yes, maybe, probably. But I think it's about figuring out where these issues. This is back to what I said earlier in my presentation. Money. So let me just say this: money is not the number one issue. So the funding is not the number one issue. For Navajo, for us working with Navajo, the number one issue is the red tape. And Delegate Brown is right. It's red tape on both sides. We have red tape, and the nation has red tape. And trying to figure out a process for how we mirror and get through the red tape on both sides. I will do whatever I can within my authority to try to alleviate the red tape, and maybe we can work with various entities on the reservation to help identify some areas. And just to be quick with a few years ago, we had an issue, and I know Delegate Crotty probably remembers this because it was the project on the Gadi where we had all this money just ready, waiting to go to do the irrigation system up there. And it came down to an issue with like direct costs in the contract. And we had to actually go to the tribal, there had to be a vote by the tribal council to waive the direct costs so we could get the project done. It's those kind of things. And that was a one-time waiver we got. And so that one project, we got to waive it. But then how do we do other projects moving forward? Those are some things that we need to try to see if we can address, because the issue is not always the funding. As I showed earlier, the commitment of the $1 million a year, we only spent it one time. So, but I know that the need is there. I mean, I've been to the reservation many, many times. We know that the need is there. So I hope I've addressed your questions, and I hope we can have some follow-up on the items as needed. So I'll hand it back over to you, Mr. Chairman.
Sir Henyo, this is Delegate Crotty with the question.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Tatum, for your response. I'll go back to the Budget and Finance Committee. Delegate Amber Canes-Bacarati, you have the floor.
Delegate
yes.
for the chairman.
Yes, thank you, Chairman Henyo, committee members, and Ms. Tatum, thank you for providing the report to the Budget and Finance Committee. I requested this report be added to the agenda because I am concerned regarding the commitment of the $1 million, the annual commitment, and yet on our side, Navajo Nation, I don't know if it's technically called a reversion, but then if we're not able to fully expend the $1 million in projects, then that money's moved. So in my eyes, internally, that's similar to a reversion where we're not maximizing the amount of funding that is available. And my concern, Chair and committee members, is this is not a fund that's competitive. This is a fund that has been committed by USDA, NRCS, and as a committee, what are we going to do to make sure that the nation is set up to fully expend these dollars? And matter of fact, my understanding is if we can get these issues addressed, it can open up for more funding or more secured funding, similar to what like the city of Prescott and how they're doing some of their management, conservation management regarding the wildfires and keeping their communities and dealing with their natural resource issues. So I do have individual projects, but I don't want to use this time to ask about those projects because I want to focus in how do we make the system better. So you did ask, or you did in your report say, Navajo Nation has not developed their priorities. So Chairman Henyo, if I could make the request that I don't know if it's going to be a Budget and Finance subcommittee or the committee as a whole wants to dedicate attention to get the priority listing. So since it affects the funding and these reversion of dollars, how do we maximize that $1 million? How do we maximize not only that 1 million, but what are other funding that we could leverage and expand to meet the needs of our natural resource challenges? And I think that the committee is in order since we're dealing with funding and dollars. In what system do we need to re-examine so that we cut down on that red tape? And we could look at what does it mean when you're doing the planning and design, what programs that's involved, but there's always a contracting component. And in talking about with the chapters, if the chapters have the authority then to contract. So that contracting process is clearly a financial matter that's under our oversight. And I think this would be a way to start helping bridge the gap on what was in the presentation. And, you know, this was reported back in 2015 to the Sehasen Committee. That was a committee that was a very controlling committee, almost acting like as a small version of the council. And so I think, unfortunately, if they were presented to, then none of these recommendations were moved forward on because we're here 7 years later in the midst of a mega drought, in the midst of climate season changing, and we as a council have not created a solution working with executive department to maximize these dollars. So that's really my concern in terms of how we can get the committee with our oversight or taking this to Nabakiatiet, because we have to fix these internal issues so that we're ready to come to the table to talk to BIA, to talk to NRCS, and our own system in there was this coordinated effort like on conservation planning. We have to continue to be at the table and make those decisions. And council has that authority. What then, and how do we want to prioritize this funding? What are other resources that we use, like the infrastructure fund, like CEJACEN? I know that we were challenged and we were fighting that ARPA dollars also should be used since there's water shortages. And I believe that's why Vice Chair can't find a barrel, because we deployed all regional supplies out to the community so that they could have, the water barrels that they need. And so I think, Chair, if we could look at this in a system way, we would be in a better position then to ask about individual projects. We've been waiting for that Black Creek project to be completed. And the last time we met pre-COVID, NRCS was willing to pay for a position. And see, that goes back to funding, because Navajo Nation, all we do is we pay positions out of our general funds. NRCS was, willing to pay for a position. I'm not sure if that ever happened. I'm not sure if that position was ever in place. So Ms. Tatum, can you give us an update with that project in particular? Because that project is holding up any other projects that can be added. Because it was my understanding they wanted to get that project done before they onboarded any additional projects. Chair, we do have here in Northern Agency, of course, the San Juan farmers are coming together with their own watershed and irrigation projects. But along the Tuscany Mountain, on this east side of the Tuscany Mountain, we're at the final stages of Army Corps of Engineers are finishing, I believe, their watershed study, and we'll submit that over to NRCS, and we'll understand what are funding opportunities, and if there's opportunity to work with the state, like the state of New Mexico, since we're on the New Mexico side, but we do have communities on the Arizona side, and then understanding how through tribal, federal, and state, we can start addressing these chronic natural resources challenges on Navajo Nation. Thank you, Chair and committee members.
Thank you for your questions to the presenter, Shananta. And also your question regarding the $1 million and the how we can spend it. We do have a joint meeting with the RDC next week, and with that joint meeting, we could put that as part of our agenda for discussion with RDC. Both committees can come up with a solution, so we could do that, Shananta, on your recommendation. So with this, Shananta, Delegate Jimmy Yellen here, you have the floor. Delegate Jimmy Yellen here, Shananta, are you there?
Oh, yeah, that's the chairman. Yeah, out on the share for my colleagues being a committee bring this very important review reports. Thank you, Keisha Tatum, thanks, State Conservationist from Phoenix, Arizona. I have a very serious concerns. Water is life. From Black Mesa. We're losing a lot of water from Black Mesa area, Forest Lake, and also Hardship and Pinion. The water just runs off to down in the Hopi country down there. And what's very important, I need a better dam or reservoir in Black Mesa, Forest Lake, Hardship, Pinion, Whippoorwill, in that area, the 15 regions. What I'd like to see is they've been requested for to build new earth dams, reservoirs, and catching earth dams and reservoirs, repair and maintenance, drought contingency, plan like implement drought mitigations and measure improve water retention, collections, reduce irrigation runoff. We just talked about erosion. That's going to really help. And well planned. A well make then heavy dirt compact to reduce irrigation runoff, erosions. And this is a lot to talk about it. This is very important in my area, in Pinion and Chichigina area. We need to catch these water. We need a better well made a reservoir and dam. We just talked like this, but hopefully everything implement for us. And we've been talking, but kind of wishing things to me. And I hope trying to request us to maybe through sales funds for Black Mesa regions. I just need about maybe $5 million. We have a lot of water just runs off. Even winter time, we have mountains up there that water just runs off from there too. But I very appreciate for bringing this before Resource Development Committee. We like to make our plan to be accomplished and our objective to about this year. But here not the here not it's the ICA I thought it links and 24 councilmen of and down she thought oh you have equipment operators and we look forward and maybe we need to invite a Tatum again, come to Resource Development Committee and let's take care of this once and for all. Water is life. We need water in Black Mesa. I said no the whole Tatum our livestock really needs water. Top the bar you need the you big because the better the big because I said top the whole year NTUA chapter has also the here he need of done and he thought ni talk granite area down here to cold water when they go toward us in door but us do I see you would have toward the whole year hot area about this in some if this reservoir is going to be very good and then will be very good for us that will be a good resource we need water once about speed only terms to a share so not any councilman so my thanks for your good prayers yeah was on this yeah
Commissioner Delegate Jimmy Elliott for your question. I defer back to Ms. Tatum for response.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So to address Delegate Crotty's question on the update, first on the Upper and Lower Black Creek. So Upper and Lower Black Creek watershed projects. And it can be confusing because it's a watershed project, but it's funded through the RCPP, which is Regional Conservation Partnership Program, that allows us to use the authorities of other programs, but it has its own funding. So that was approved. And in my mind, I feel like it was I think the project is $7 million. I'm sorry. Don't quote me. I believe it's $7 million was the project, Delegate Crotty. And yes, we actually had to request an extension to extend that project. And we have one more year to complete it or we will lose the funds. So of course, COVID definitely slowed a lot of things down, which is how we were able to get the extension. But we have since that time, and this year we've gotten really busy. So it was moving it was moving slowly, but now we're moving. We got a contractor on board that is helping to facilitate some of the stakeholder meetings, because of what our projects, when we do a watershed project, we have to engage a lot of the folks, the people on the ground, and engage stakeholders, do some activities related to that, not just looking at the science of things, but also looking at the culture and the human factor of things. So it is beginning to move now, Delegate Crotty. Then you also asked, and we hope we make the deadline. It looks like we will, though. It does look like we will. And Treva, of course, that is a big part of what she is managing every single day. And so every day she is almost working on to kind of get that going and keep the nation engaged and work with the contractor to get that project, just so we can get the plan completed for those two watersheds. And you asked about the position and the authority for that. So if I can explain a little bit, NRCS has some unique authorities. Some federal agencies have it. I don't think all have it. I do know that all don't have it because I don't think sister agency has it. But we have some authority to go into different types of agreements. From a federal standpoint, we have different names of these agreements. A contribution agreement, and in a contribution agreement, we can share staff with entities. And that could be a state agency, that could be a tribal government, it could be a conservation district, those kind of entities where we can pay for a portion of the cost. It's usually half and half. We pay half and the entity pay half, but there are instances where we paid as much as 75% of the cost of that staff person. For that staff person to do, we pay a percentage and we have shared missions. And so we're willing to pay a half or 50 to 75% of the cost for that staff. And we did go into an agreement, Delegate Crotty, with the nation on that a couple of years ago. But unfortunately, it did not, I don't believe, and I'll verify this, let me just verify, but I remember the last briefing I got from my team, we never paid any money out on that. And so eventually the agreement expired. So let me verify that. So because I know I'm on the record, but I believe that was the last briefing I got on it. 100% open to looking at exploring that again with Navajo Nation, but that would have to come with the bigger questions being answered and being clear about what that position does, because I think that was the issue. I don't think, because we didn't have the process in place, it wasn't really clear what that role, what that person was going to do. And so that may have been why we never had any payout on it. So that's in response to your questions. And for Delegate Yellow Hair, again, I will look into some of the Black Mesa issues, and it could possibly be a watershed project, but we need to figure out how we're going to prioritize. So the issues that Delegate Crotty brought up, and she's very familiar with them because we've been working on them for quite some time, would be applicable in that case as well. I think that's my response to those questions, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Thank you for the response. Back to the committee. So with this, Budget and Finance Committee members, are there any further questions, comments?
Eugene So, not the committee, but
Budget and Finance Committee members, are there any further questions or comments?
But it's also, it has a grant, and within that grant, it has a.
If there are no further questions from the committee, we do have Shananta Delegate Eugene So on the line. Also, we do have Shananta Delegate Odo So Che also on the line, as they text earlier. So if there's no further questions or comments from the Budget and Finance Committee, I'll defer to Shananta Delegate Eugene So. Shananta.
that's it. So now it is, so I don't know by this time, maybe Keisha knows how to speak Navajo. Seems like he should be speaking all kind of language. We got a lot of Indians in Arizona. Hi, Keisha. Anyway, okay, she's kind of quite a while back. We had the year 2019 had an agreement between all the big people from Washington. NRCS included, Farm Service included, the BIA, Interior Secretary. All these people, the top people, signed their name on the agreement. And since then, it seems that the Navajo Nation kind of going down because seems that you guys don't work with the Soil Water Conservation District no more. And we got 5 districts across the Navajo Nation. And seems that they're not really doing anything after that. So I don't know where we had with the Department of Agriculture, United States Department of Ag, NRCS, and EQUIT funds, etc. So, and then now, I guess just when about 4 years ago, just when I became council, I've been trying to get all these 5 watersheds that was studied at the time. There was 5 watersheds across the Navajo Nation, and my Candy Shea was part of it. And it was started from Campus Sayid, but it never did finish. Those are still questioning. I don't know where it is, and also if it's still alive or we had to start all over again. So, and then who to work with. It seems like the last time I heard is that there's a lot of chiefs in the Navajo Nation that you don't know which one to work with. The grading committee or the Department of Ag or the Division of Natural Resource or the President of the Navajo Nation. So it seems that those are the chain of command right now with a different grading committee. They, within their plan of operation, as I recall, I gave you the CFR 25 Part 67, where it says that the first thing that on their authority is to conserve water, land, and forests, and to build up those areas where it's deteriorated. So I feel that's where the NRCS comes in, and with the funds and everything else that they can study how much, etc. And also now we have CKR, so it's insurance for drought, and that money should be going with that money with cost share. It should be set up that way, but it's not set up like that right now. So we got money for the NRCS to cost share with that insurance money for the drought. If we can revisit and change it, how it was planned to use it on the Navajo Nation, and other things being used wisely in regards to building up deteriorated areas on the Navajo Nation. So with that, also I gave it a grading committee, a plan of operation, where they're a government, part of a government to government, and also where it says they're the people that can do the deteriorated areas, where it's deteriorated, where it's going to be really easy to work with. So my plan right now is I'm trying to get another legislation being researched now, is to get the grading committee out of the program and put them into straight across with the Resource Development Committee and the Division of Natural Resource up there where they belong, so they can do some work with the United States Department of Ag. So that's what my next legislation is going to be for. No, all my legislation was very controversial among my colleagues. So, and also after the comments. So that's going to be the next one that's going on forward. If I do that, I was wondering if you could work straight with the grading committee and do their plan of operation where it says to build up deteriorated areas. And I really want to get it where you can work with them. Like the Soil Water Conservation District, they're all out there. We got five districts, and it seems like they're not really that active no more. And it seems like right now, it seems that 141 is all gone. But for the department, bigger government to government is the one that's being funded. So I would really like to sit back down with you in regards to the Candy Shea watershed before my term is up here. But that's one of the things that I want to start again, because we do need the NRCS and also the United States Corps of Engineers. They're also in on it this time. So they're studying the floodplain for me now. So that's what's going on in Chinle. So that's my question is where if it could be done, if the council would back me up and approve it for me to put the grading committee up there with the division director and the Resource and Development Committee, would that really help to work with that land which that's in their plan of operation, in their CFR 25-167 and the 3 Navajo Nation Code 8701. If we can work with that with the grading committee, would it help to really help us out with fund these really needed deteriorated areas on the Navajo Nation? Thank you, Hinyo. Share.
I'll defer back to Ms. Tatum.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and it's good to hear your voice, Delegate. So we've been working together for many, many, many years. So I'll try to answer your questions as best I can. And yes, we need to follow up on the Canyon de Chelly. So you first asked about the status of the relationship with the SWCDs, the Soil and Water Conservation Districts. And so we definitely still have a relationship with the SWCDs. They not recently, but they did get their plan of operations, or the requirements that the tribe had for them have been cleared up, and I think they're now assigned to the RDC. It's not clear how we interact with them, because now that they're reporting directly to the RDC, are they part of the executive branch or are they part of the legislative branch? So there's a little bit of confusion still there. We would love to work with them. It is a unit, as far, they are a unit of the tribe. Even though NRCS in the 80s was the one that asked the tribe to create them, because at that time, NRCS kind of had this philosophy that you had to have a SWCD in order to work with NRCS. Or at least that's how we interpreted our role at that time. I don't interpret our role at that time. I am a federal entity, and we have the authority to work with a tribe and not dictate to the tribe how they should be structured in order to work with the federal government. So, and that is how we have the posture that the agency is now taking as well. So we're going to work with the SWCDs, the grazing officials, and any other entity in the way in which the tribe tells us they want us to work with them. And that's kind of been that's been my stance since I've gotten in this role as the state conservationist 11 years ago. I take my instructions on how to administer our programs on the reservation according to how that tribal government tells me they want to administer. And we do have specific instructions with different tribes from those tribes on how they want that done. And would love to have something formalized with Navajo Nation on how tribal consultation is to be done, who signs, back to those questions before. And I know it's not I know it's a heavy lift to ask some of these things that I'm asking, but it definitely would make it much easier to be able to work, and much easier for our team to be able to engage where they need to be. So we would love to continue to have a relationship with the SWCDs, and that is however the tribe tells us they want what they want that relationship to be. Because even though there was something that was signed between the secretary and the SWCDs, that document does not supersede any authority the tribal nation as a sovereign nation would have. So I abide by whatever the tribe wants us to do. Studies. Okay. I think I owe you something. Sounds like, and I think I do remember us having this conversation. You wanted the list. It was a list of priority watersheds that was done back in the 90s. I remember this conversation now, Delegate. So, and if you're asking it, that means I did not send it. So if you're asking for it, that didn't mean that that's on me. And so I would take that if I didn't send that to you and put that on my note. And I know that both Treva and Laverne are on. And so Laverne is probably taking a note for me to get that to you. That list. At that time, it was a list of priority watersheds. Acai Lake was the first priority back then. And this was in the 90s. And that's why the Acai Lake watershed project was done first. But there was a list established at that point in time, I don't know, by the nation on which watersheds would go in what order. And you're right, Canyon de Chelly was on there. There weren't any, Acai Lake was the only one that got done. But I do have that list, and anything that we have, we'll try to get to you. We remodeled our office and went paperless. So everything has been scanned. Give me, and maybe that's why I didn't send it to you, but I'll follow up with you on that because we do have it. I've seen it. So we'll get that to you. Make myself a note, but I know Laverne is probably making me a note too. You mentioned the insurance funds from the Risk Management Agency. The insurance fund, that's funds that the nation received from USDA. That is through the Risk Management Agency. So that's something that you guys will have to follow up with the Risk Management Agency on. NRCS was not part of that anything with those insurance programs or those payouts. So, but they are our sister agency, and if you guys need the contact information for them, we can get that for you, because they don't have an office in Arizona. The office that services Arizona is actually in California. But if you need that contact information, we can share that with you, or you can. I know that the Department of of Agriculture, Navajo Nation Department of Agriculture would have that contact information as well. And I think grazing committees, you said they have government to government authority. And if that is indeed the case, or that's the case of what you guys are going to give them, then we would work with them however the tribe wishes us to work with them. So I think that was all of your questions. So I hand it back over to you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Tatum, for your response back to the committee. Back to the Budget and Finance Committee. Any further questions, comments? Then no, if there are no further questions or comments from the Budget and Finance Committee, I'll call for the question to accept the report. I'll call for the question. Ramona, roll call vote to accept the report.
Yes, Chairman Henry, roll call vote on accepting the report. Honorable Raymond Smith Jr., how do you vote? Honorable Raymond Smith Jr., how do you vote?
Green.
Thank you. Honorable Raymond Smith Jr. votes green. Honorable Jimmy Yellowhair, how do you vote? Honorable Jimmy Yellowhair, how do you vote? Honorable Amber Kenneth Crotty, how do you vote? Honorable Amber Kenneth Crotty, how do you vote? Honorable Nathaniel Brown.
This is Delegate Amber Kenneth Crotty. I apologize. I vote green. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Shadeja. Honorable Amber Kenneth Crotty votes green. Honorable Nathaniel Brown, how do you vote?
Delegate Brown votes in favor.
Thank you. Honorable Nathaniel Brown votes in favor. Honorable Elmer P. Begay, how do you vote? Honorable Elmer P. Begay, how do you vote?
I'll vote green.
Thank you. Honorable Elmer P. Begay votes green. Honorable Jimmy Yellowhair, how do you vote? Honorable Jimmy Yellowhair, how do you vote?
I'll vote green. Thank you.
Thank you. Honorable Jimmy Yellowhair votes green. Chairman, we have 5 members voting in the affirmative, 0 opposing, chairman not voting. Chairman?
Thank you for the roll call vote. We do have 5 in favor, 0 opposed, chair not voting. Motion to accept the report passes. Thank you, Ms. Tatum, for being on the call with us this morning.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And then let's move to the next report, item B, FRF update. Mr. Tom Platero, are you on the call?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I am.
Tom, you have the floor. Proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Since my last report on June 21, Indian FRF office has been participating in the following. We're still continuing to coordinate with the broadband office, the Navajo Telecommunications Regulatory Commission. We did devise a draft plan of operation that will need review before we can initiate legislation. We've also been coordinating with the Division of Human Resources and Department of Personnel Management to finalize the contract for the Human Resources Information System. The contractor has been selected and we are in the process of setting that contract up. Another contract that we've issued is with Strongbow. They're going to be doing the proposal writing for the FRF funding and other funding to support the projects that have been funded under the Navajo Nation. We did our accounting section, did update the FRF budget summary reports that included the 3 categories, which is approved expenditure plan, the CARES defunded, and the administrative budgets. Those were also emailed out to council and posted on the FRF website. We did work with a vendor. We were over at the DOT building, but there was an issue, a carbon monoxide issue, so we had to leave that building. We are situated, part of our team is situated in Tepanito. They're sharing office spaces with the Navajo Nation Broadband Office. We are working on that lease agreement to make sure that it's covered all the way to the end of the FRF program. We have two Navajo student interns that are working with the FRF office. We have one situated with Lisa Gym Shop, and we have another a young lady that's working with us. She'll be developing the, there's a section in CJY 4121 that required a presence on social media. This individual is studying journalism, and so she'll be developing those as far, and also an outreach campaign to get people to visit our website so they can get the information on there. So she's already started on it. Her first release will be next week in the Navajo Times. We are looking at another building to rent. We were trying to get permanent facilities, but we weren't able to get clearance from Department of Justice because their preference is that we rent. So there is a second building that Mr. Arnold Jake from our office is working on for the additional staff. We did have a work session last week between that was sponsored by Division of Community Development on the implementation of the 8 million per region. We did provide some recommendations. We haven't heard anything back yet, so we're going on ahead and devising a process that will facilitate the submission of each delegate's regional expenditure plan. We should be releasing that probably the first part of next week. It's just be coordination and making sure that that the projects that are recommended are the ones that are expedited through the eligibility determination process. FRF did take much of the time during the last 2 weeks to participate in the Navajo Nation Council special session to address 0086-22. Appreciate your vote of to pass this legislation, and then we'll proceed forward as we need to. Mr. Chair, those are the updates from within the last 2 weeks from the last time I reported to the committee. Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Tom Platero, for your report. With this, committee members, Budget and Finance Committee, is there a motion to accept the report?
This is Delegate Brown, all motion.
A motion by Shanada, Delegate Nathaniel Brown. Is there a second?
Delegate Yellowhead.
Second, Delegate Crotty.
Okay, Shanada, Delegate Amber Canaspa Karate second. So we do have a motion and a second on the floor. With this, the floor is open for questions for Mr. Platero.
Chair Hanyo, this is Delegate Crotty with a question.
Shanada, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you, Chair. If we could receive timelines in terms of the broadband office and how they're going to be developing or moving forward with the broadband initiative. I have not seen any type of documentation or request to meet with District 12, and that's concerning as we've had this conversation maybe within the last 2 months regarding how projects will be submitted. The second area is Chair and committee members. Navajo Nation also is receiving additional federal funds. I think well over $600 million spread across the other executive programs. I would like to ask Mr. Patero, are they responsible to administer any of that funding, or what entity is tracking all of the additional federal funding that are coming down the pipeline to help the nation assist with our COVID response? Thank you, Chair.
Mr. Tom Platero, a response? Thank you for the question, Shananda.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, on the broadband office, they are still working on a rollout of how they're going to do that. Right now, it's basically catching up on a lot of information. A lot of the information that they have is proprietary, and so it's difficult to release that. I would be a little bit more comfortable having Mr. Tico Charlie, that works with the Navajo Telecommunications Regulatory Commission, provide that information to the committee. I will speak to him and Ms. Nez about providing a report highlighting the process that they want to use to implement the broadband office. The broadband office was established, I believe, a month and a half, 2 months ago. So they've been trying to gather as much information as they can. There is some information as far as the Arcadian project that goes along 89-160. There is information about what parts of Navajo are already lit up and what isn't lit up. By lit up, what I mean is the availability of broadband within those sections. They're also taking a look at the major lines. It's kind of like a freeway system and how to connect all 110 of our communities to that availability of broadband. The problem being is that we have individuals that are trying to develop really high level technology, but it's not really supported by the bandwidth needed. One of the things that I have reported to the committee before is that we're trying to standardize that any development needs to run at the 100 megahertz. I'm not sure if I'm using the correct term. The speed of it has to be at least at 100. The ARPA guidance indicates that it should be 100 going up and 100 going down. Right now, there are some areas that are going to have difficulty meeting that requirement, but it's best to kind of keep everything standardized so that going forward, there won't be costs for upgrades and all of that later. I will go on ahead and check with Dr. Fowler on the NOSHA federal fundings that you provided, and I will provide a written response from Dr. Fowler back to the Budget and Finance Committee. I'll route it through the chair, and I'll also make sure that Ms. Peggy Nakai receives that information so that she can distribute it to the membership of the Budget and Finance Committee. And as far as what entity is responsible for tracking all of the individual funding, let me get together with my team and we'll see if we can assign this to one of our staff. But it is difficult to track stuff that's not within the Navajo Nation, but we will make an effort to provide that information. Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Platero, for your response back to the committee. With that, back to the Budget and Finance Committee. Any further questions, comments?
Chair Henyo, this is Delegate Cotty.
Mr. you have the floor for a follow-up.
Oh, thank you, Chair. I appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Patero, for your response. And just to clarify, it's still Navajo Nation. That federal funding was given to Navajo Nation programs. I'm just not sure how our OMB and OOC identify those dollars. Like I'm not sure if they consider it ARPA is what I'm saying, but I know there's about $600 billion out there for the different Navajo Nation programs. With that in mind, in reviewing 4121, could you give us an update on the Navajo Nation Business Opportunity Act and excuse me, and where you're at with providing bonding, insurance, and other needed support to grow Navajo Nation economy through private sector contracting using ARPA Navajo Nation fiscal recovery and or other Navajo Nation external funding. So this was due September 21st, 2021. And I did hear you verbally report that your team was notified and now working on it. If you could give us a timeline when the committee should expect to receive that report from your office. Thank you, Mr. Patel.
Thank you for your question, Shalanda. Back to Mr. Platero.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, I do understand and I have taken responsibility for not providing the information yet. I do want to coordinate on the response on the business opportunity, the section in CJY 41 about bonding and all of that. I will coordinate with the Division of Economic Development, and in 2 weeks, when I do provide another update, I will have information for you. The majority of our time has been involved with tracking legislation 0086-22. So I apologize for not having more information on that. We are trying to transition into the implementation of that, but I will make sure that we make this a priority. Mr. Chair.
Mr. Platero, does that complete your response?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Okay, I apologize. I'm doing two things here, but I'm back to the Budget and Finance Committee. Any further questions, comments for Mr. Platero?
Chair,
committee members, any further questions?
This is Delegate Brown.
Delegate Nathaniel Brown, you have the floor.
Oh, yeah. Thank you, Mr. Platero, for your presentation and your team there at the FRF office. I continue to get a lot of questions. I know that on the Budget and Finance Committee, we did pass legislations to approve this funding and also the Navajo Nation Council. So the big question, I know a lot of people are listening right now on social media, but their questions are for Navajo nonprofits who would like to apply for the ARPA funding. Do they just continue to go to the website and apply for the American Rescue Plan funding for Navajo-owned nonprofits who are giving services to our Navajo people? And I do see, and I really do support our Navajo nonprofits. As we're all aware, and yourself, the bureaucracy and red tape of the Navajo Nation is ridiculous. So people are now going the route of creating nonprofits to serve our people who are in need, instead of waiting for Navajo Nation. My chapters had to do similar. So we want to continue to work with, and they, I'm hearing and listening to this from organizations in the chambers, people who try to go to economic development for some of these services. So if you can help us navigate through this and through your website. Thank you for posting all the previous legislations are on your website, and the few pages that are on there with the process. So and again, if you can just explain it to us again. I know that this is a question that we keep asking, but we do appreciate your work, and please share that information with us again. Thank you, Speaker.
Ms. Shenandoah, Delegate Nathaniel Brown, for your questions. Peggy, did you have a comment?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. My question was, do you have a motion and second for this report? I was just wondering if I missed something here.
Oh, Peggy, we do have a motion by Shenandoah, Delegate Nathaniel Brown, second by Shenandoah, Delegate Amber Knesset-Bakrati.
Okay, thank you.
Sheena, that back to Mr. Platero.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Delegate Brown, at this point in the process, if people want to submit, including the Navajo Nation nonprofits, they can submit their proposal through our office. We'll be happy to accommodate them. But with the passage of 0086-22, there aren't any additional funds left to allocate depending on what the president signs into law. The other part of it is, if you recall, in CJY 41-21, there will be a review of expenditures at the end of the second quarter in 2024, which would be around this time, so that any funds that aren't being expended, council will then get a chance to review all of those ones. So my recommendation would be to have your nonprofits that are wanting to submit for ARPA funding work with our office. We will sign off on their eligibility determination list or their eligibility determination documents to submit to DOJ, and we're happy to facilitate that process. There is over 250 some previous reviews, and that's the information that I emailed to the 24th Navajo Nation Council to say these are the projects that have been reviewed for eligibility determination. And that list can then be used as part of the review by regions for their $8 million. Also, delegates, if they so wish to make some of those projects, nonprofit ones, they could fit those into their $8 million allocations. We do have a recommendation on the process for that. And if the committee wishes us to share our recommendation, we're happy to do that. If not, then we can provide that information otherwise. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Platero, for your response. Back to the committee. Budget and Finance Committee. Shenandoah, are there any further questions, comments?
This is Delegate Yellowhair.
Shenandoah, Delegate Jamil here.
Oh, yes, to the chairman of Shenandoah Budget and Finance Committee. Mr. Chair, thank you for your great report. You've been on time, everything's there. Appreciate for your all the report as financial information. Also, not the Kidege the Kabada Hulane, the Beningi. It's just a worksheet in the Sicily, Don Patero. It's not the worksheet on financial report. That's all to the chairman.
Katrina, Shenandoah, Delegate Jamil here. Mr. Platero, do you have a response?
I apologize, Mr. Chair. Was there a question in there?
Do you have a response or not?
I'm sorry. I'm trying to do a few things at once. I don't understand Mr. Delegate Yellowhair's question. My apologies.
Delegate Jamil here. Did you have a question for Mr. Platero? Back to the Budget and Finance Committee. Any further questions, comments?
Okay, all right. I was on mute. I'm sorry. Okay, Mr. Patero, my question was, do you have the worksheet? We were just not talking on it, on your report, in the personal financial report on what you're talking about. It's on the Chairman, Secretary, yeah.
Kashikia for clarifying your question. Mr. Platero?
Mr. Chair, members of the committees, on Nido, June 30th, budget report, Chigi updated Dalia, email Islam there, but not Ishlish acquire on zone, Mr. Chair.
Kashikia, Mr. Platero, for your response. Back to Budget Finance Committee members. Do we have any further questions or comments for Mr. Botero?
Chairman, any of this, Vice Chair Smith?
Vice Chair Smith, you have the floor.
Oh, Kayla, Chairman and Budget Finance Committee members. Ida Dasanosnagi from the Navajo Nation, Mr. Botero, for bringing this report. My question is 0086-22. Ila da si Cledo le da President A Baboli got tree ne had as a budget Kylie had as a skido. Of course, United Kid A be slaggy ARPA dadine, ARPA office dadine. President so busy lado yal had a bendo nesto for that egi. His staff is abiga. Ashka bendo nesto. One-stop shop. Saan wat daar niet, is gedol wordt. Oh, dat dan klauwen je als je het eten. En dus pas dat is. Are you ready to, I guess, for lack of terms, rock and roll? We have 1.7 billion. I don't know the other question, though. In that legislation, is that big Bishmasa and Kado what project managers hello. Ish bahalo. And in do you the Kushi the Mifto na tinti e aja da Bishmasa and projects state and da no. Yeah, ha state at the and lay the chapters what thou spade a husband does it. It does it without question. Okay, did that eggy Ashbone it not cut. Neither could be slaggy. Okay, la chair, I don't DNF committee members on the Finnegy. Thank you.
Chair Henia.
Sir Tom Platero, response to Vice Chair Smith.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, our office just met this morning on how we can implement 8622. We believe we can handle all of it. We are going to coordinate with the entities that are there. We have some people that are already calling saying that they have contracts ready, but we have to follow the process of setting up those accounts. And then with OMB, once those accounts are set up, then they'll need a expenditure authorization form sheet signed. Then we can begin the review process for those. We are working on multiple fronts to try to get ready for all of this. We have been in preparation mode for the day that Council would pass that, so it's not all new. We have run several case scenarios through on how we can work best with the departments and all the individuals that receive funding. We are going to set up a meeting, executive meeting, to map out all of this process. I honestly think that we can get this done very quickly and get things processed. On the one-stop shop, the hindrance on that, sir, right now is the hiring of individuals into those positions. To that end, we have been coordinating with Department of Personnel Management, but within the FRF office, we have assigned 4 of our staff to work with each of the departments that receive administrative regulatory support costs to try to expedite the hiring of those individuals. I myself have taken the FRF office, the broadband office, and the Navajo Nation Washington office. So each of our staff, 4 of our staff have been assigned departments to work to get all of those positions hired for. There are project managers that are funded within community development. There are individuals that are going to be hired to expedite the review process for right-of-way, land withdrawals, all of those ones. There is a plan that has been worked on. There is a pending legislation that needs to be drafted by Legislative Council. Once those are done, I believe Council will have a better understanding of the one-stop shop process, but we do need that legislation processed out there. Mr. Chair.
Mr. Platero, for your response back to the committee. Back to the Budget and Finance Committee, Shinanda. Any further questions, comments?
So, Nana, Shinanda, Chairman Henry, Vice Chair Nana.
Vice Chair Smith, follow up.
I'll go see. Oh, follow up. Ahead, Wednesday, no, not the rain sea. Shinada kid, I contemplate business unit number. I call the one-stop shop. Ish Aziada Haziado. Ish get that days in. Then in addition again later, Kushina Hay, Kushin the Zita. Hajisha that did no. Ocha that the business. OMP Bajaraho. Said not na OOC Baja now. Well, later that didn't they, OMB. What out? Oh, but now hello. So, Azunda, call one-stop shop that did. Then again, other business unit number 3 had all was so, but in a papa. Edo Nasi Rata. I call did it, the Shinigi, other his Annie South Ando, Caspinina, Dean Lady Washington. Yarn had this called Skilo that the study known Benina and Lena Kinache, I would have drawn us. I don't lay Nakinanache, 2026 April, Nanish Eliago. A bonnet, not done. A what Shinaidi kid. Okay, Chair.
Vice Chair Smith, for your questions. Back to you, Mr. Patero.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, as far as setting up business units, we've learned to coordinate very well with Office of Management and Budget. Mr. Cordell Shorty and Jermaine Jones and the team over there at OMB have worked very well with us to set up the previous accounts. So we learned quite a bit from that. So I don't anticipate any issues with getting the account set up. When we were at the tail end of the administrative budgets, we went from about 2 weeks to set up accounts to about 3 days. So I don't anticipate any delay in setting up these accounts. So these funds can be made available, but there are processes after the accounts are set up that need to be completed, such as the forms needed for expenditures through Office of the Controller. Office of the Controller has put in a team that's headed by Emerson, I forget his name, and Sharice. Those 2 individuals over there will expedite the process. So setting up the accounts and then setting up the paperwork needed to begin the expenditure process should not be an issue, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Platero, for your response. Back to Budget and Finance Committee. Any further questions, comments from Mr. Platero? If there are no further questions or comments, we'll call for the question.
To the chairman, this is Delegate Yell here. I just
Commissioner
want to say thank you to Mr. Patera for follow-up. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Okay, with that, if there are no further questions or comments, Ramona, roll call vote for the accept report.
Yes, Chairman Henry, roll call vote on accepting the report. Honorable Raymond Smith Jr., how do you vote? I'm sorry, can you repeat that, please?
Shanella, I vote green.
Okay, thank you, Shanella. Honorable Raymond Smith Jr. votes green. Honorable Jimmy Yellowhair, how do you vote? Honorable Jimmy Yellowhair, how do you vote? Honorable Amber Kenneth Crowdy, how do you vote?
Delegate Yell here votes green.
Thank you. Thank
Yes,
you,
and
Honorable.
Delegate Amber Kiddes Valcardi votes green. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Jimmy Yellowhair votes green, and Honorable Amber Kenneth Crowdy votes green. Honorable Nathaniel Brown, how do you vote?
Delegate Brown votes in favor.
Thank you. Honorable Nathaniel Brown votes in favor. Honorable Elmer P. Begay, how do you vote? Honorable Elmer P. Begay, how do you vote? Chairman, we have 4 members voting in the affirmative, 0 opposing. Chairman not voting.
I vote green. I vote green.
Thank you. Honorable Elmer P. Begay votes green. Chairman, we have 5 members voting in favor, 0 opposing, and Chairman not voting. Chairman?
Thank you. 5 in favor, 0 opposed, chair not voting. Mr. Platero. Thank you for your report. Next report, Mr. Dominic Biel, are you on the call, Mr. Dominic Biel?
Yes, sir, I am.
Kashina, sir, you have the floor to give your report. Item C.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee, and others on the line. The report I'm going to give speaks about the update on the FY23 budget process. So, as the Budget and Finance Committee will recall, on June 21st, the BNF Committee approved, passed the fiscal year 23 budget legislation, which approved the revenues for the general fund as well as the permanent fund income, and then approved the branch planning allocations, chapter planning allocations, fixed costs allocations, and then also approved the BIM, the Budget Instructions Manual, with 2 amendments. So since then, all of this, the paperwork, meaning the resolution in final form, as well as the BIM in final form, have all been produced and have been provided to the branches, divisions, and is on our website. So the budget process is underway as we speak. In a discussion with brief discussion with Ms. Nakai last week, the BNF advisor, I was informed that it would be well for me to go over the budget calendar so that we all understand some of the key dates involved for various budget activities. So that particular exhibit is Exhibit E to the Budget and Finance Committee resolution. And the resolution, as well as the exhibits, of course, are now a part of the BIM. So hopefully you have that in front of you. So, because I'm going to go through that just very quickly. Budget activity 1. Again, if you have it in front of you, it's dated June 21st. As I just mentioned, that's when the BNF committee approved all of the documents, paperwork, the BIM, and so on regarding the 23 budget process. The next activity, number 2, is for the branch chiefs using their planning allocations to make their internal planning allocations to the various divisions, departments, and programs. The third is June 24th, assuming number 2 has happened in a timely way, then the budget process, development of the budget forms would start. Now, number 3, we have do a budget preparation orientation and issue the BIM to the branches, divisions, and other users. So that was done by OMB. And this year, just like last year, primarily because of the pandemic, it's a slideshow presentation that we put together and put on our website as well. And furthermore, it's been forwarded to all the branches and the divisions for their use. And it gives basic guidance and instruction on the budget process, the BIM, and some of the changes that are incorporated therein. So thereafter, beginning step number 4, June 23rd, up to today, all of the various budgets are being developed and worked on by the branches, divisions, departments, and programs. Number 5, beginning tomorrow, is OMB would work to prepare all of this budget information from the branch chiefs to prepare for the branch chiefs budget hearings, which will be held next week. That's step number 6. July 11th through the 13th is when the branch chiefs would hold their own budget hearings for the various budget proposals within their branches and make decisions therefore in order to prepare for the Oversight Committee budget hearings, which would begin the week after the Navajo Nation Council summer session. That would be July 25th that week. But before then, step number 8 would be July 18th through the 19th is when the Oversight Committee proposed budget legislations would be dropped. So, and then counting the 10 days will allow for those budget resolutions to be ready for the consideration of the Oversight Committees. Step 11, we would then prepare thereafter. OMB would August 1st through the 5th, preparing the budget packages and information for the BNF Committee budget hearings. Budget and Finance Committee budget hearings, step number 12, would be August 8th through the 19th. That's when the BNF Committee would conduct your hearings, review, approve the budgets, hear from the Oversight Committees, and then develop the Navajo Nation Council overall comprehensive budget legislation. Step 13 is again OMB would work to prepare all of the related budgets and documents and so forth for the Navi Committee, which would be step number 14, August 31st through September 1st. And that's a 2-day period. It could be both days, it could be one. And then step 15, September 6th through the 9th, would be the Navajo Nation Council Comprehensive Budget session. September 6th through the 9th is what has become over the years the typical budget session. That's the day after Labor Day, and it's during the week of the Navajo Nation Fair. So we've gotten into that same time frame again. Step 16, counting 10 days after the council adopts the budget resolution, and then it's submitted to the president. The president would have up to that time to act on the budget resolution, the budget, and so forth. So that's the schedule that's laid out. In discussion again with the legislative advisor, I was mentioning to her that at the branch chiefs meeting in Albuquerque before the 21st, where the branch chiefs considered a lot of these same budget matters and issues and so on, and came up with their branch chiefs agreement. I was talking with the Chief Legislative Counsel and DOJ as well about maybe getting together and coming up with some guidance for the Oversight Committee budget hearings. Because we've noticed by experience that in some cases there isn't a standard or uniform process and procedure for the budget hearings. So we would want to do that in order to streamline and make all of the various budget hearings more user-friendly for both sides, meaning the presenters as well as the reviewers, and then the committees themselves, as far as developing their budget recommendations and budget resolutions. The ENF committee, of course, is aware that the branch chiefs provide the initial budget figures, particularly for the general funds. And then the oversight committees make recommendations. Sometimes they would change, adjust, revise some of those amounts. And then on another exhibit page, they would have a brief description of why the changes are being made. And then there would be any further budget recommendations, such as conditions of appropriations and or legislative concerns. And then what has become a standard practice is the recommendations for unmet budget needs. So we're hoping to, as I say, meet and develop a standard format for how that would be done. So when all of these budget recommendation resolutions from the oversight committees come before BNF, they should be in some standard format that would hopefully smooth the process somewhat and make it work better. So that's the overview at the moment. And as I say, the budget process is underway. Everyone's working on their budgets, including my office. We're developing our budget. And over the next 2 months or so, the process is going to roll out and hopefully be accomplished in September before the end of the fiscal year. Mr. Speaker, or Mr. Chair, rather, members of the committee and all of the listeners, that's the overview and update of where we are in the budget process. I'm available for any comments or questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you,
Almost,
Mr. Beal,
almost
for your
Delegate Yellow
report
Hair.
to the committee. So with that, committee members, is there a motion to accept the report?
Motion by Yellow Hair.
Motion by Shinada, Delegate Jimmy Yellowhair. Is there a second?
Delegate
Vice Chair
Brown.
Smith.
Shinada, Delegate Nathaniel Brown. So we have a motion and a second on the floor. With that, the floor is open for questions. Any questions
Chair,
for
this is Delegate Crowdy with the question.
Shinada? You have the floor. Floor, Miss. Questions?
Thank you, Chairman. I appreciate it. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Bial, for your report. In terms of the attempts to streamline the process, could you give us insight in terms of how OMB is modernizing or digitizing the process so we're not having to deal solely with hard copies and corrections or minor areas can be addressed during the committee budget hearing rather than calling back the program for revisit? The other area is how are we going to, how is OMB then going to provide this information? In 2020, we were able to get the OMB reports online. I don't think that was provided, or at least the online link wasn't provided last year. But in terms of how this committee is still functioning, how is then OMB creating? What's the modern, like, to digitize and making sure these documents are correct? I think we had that lengthy debate last budget about fixed costs, and sometimes we're looking at plan of operations, and some of these expenses are not allowed or not identified in their plan of operation. So I'd like to get that update, Chair, because I think when we say being effective and streamlining, it should be the process so it increases transparency, but also allows opportunity for, let's say, minor administrative issues to be addressed, or if there's amendments or movement of dollars, that there's a digital process in which we could do that as a committee. Thank you, Chair.
Shinkia Nashnanda for your questions. Back to Mr. Bial, response.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, committee members, and everyone else on the line. Responding to Delegate Crowdy's questions. To start with, this similar sort of question came up this morning at the division directors meeting with the president and his staff, where one of the subjects that was discussed is very similar to what we're talking about now, the annual comprehensive budget process, where we are, where we're going, what are the key dates, and so forth. So that discussion also included the recommendation that we try to digitalize, meaning automate the budget process as much as we can, including the budget forms, the corrections therefrom that are needed and necessary, and so on. So it led to some discussion about the upcoming branch chiefs meeting, or budget hearings rather, on the budget process. So in the case of the executive branch, as an example, the president's office has already come out with some guidance to the various divisions on how to prepare their documentation for the internal branch budget hearings. So the way it would go in that example, the example I'm talking about, is there would be minimal budget packets. The committee remembers that from each branch and division, especially recommendations from the oversight committees, what was provided to you or brought in is these huge binders sometimes full of budgets, anywhere from half a dozen to up to 30 budgets in some cases where the division is large. And it's really impossible for committees, and even for that matter, the branch chiefs, to comprehensively review every one of them. So, for the budget hearings next week, there would be a condensed version where the budget priorities are outlined, and then where the budget allocations are. So that would be a way to help do this. So the president's office won't require either all of these budget binders full of budgets from each respective division. There would simply be an edited and condensed overview of the budget material. So the recommendation was to, as well, as you say, Delegate Karate, to use computer automation as a better, more quicker way to process everything. So we're going to do that as best we can, given the circumstances. But having said that, earlier back in, I believe it was March, when we began to plan for the annual budget activity, we communicated with particularly the controller's office, and we were asking their recommendations and making suggestions to the effect of how can we automate the budget process better and make it quicker, faster, more expedient for budget procedures and processes and so on. For example, the current budgeting methodology that we use relies on the chart of accounts that's issued by the controller's office. And those of you that have seen it are familiar with it. It's very itemized. It's very detailed. So, and that's fine for the expenditure part of the budget, meaning when the budgets are set up, they're paid out using those accounts. But for budgeting purposes, we don't have to make it that much detail. Case in point, I think some of you are aware of the federal budget. The budget that's enacted by Congress, their budget appropriation bills, once they're passed and adopted, they're consolidated into what they call the Green Book. Now, the Green Book, I don't have a copy in front of me at the moment, but it's about 300 pages or so, give or take, of the entire federal government. So it's consolidated into easier to read format. It's not, in our case, object code by object code by object code by object code. All of that's been determined already, and the attention on budgets would go to the Congress is really based on the appropriations part of it. Where's the money going to be appropriated to, for what, and what are the priorities, changes, and so on. That's what we wanted to start to introduce as best we could for the 23 budget process. But to be honest with you, the pandemic, because we can't meet together and so on, the effect has been all we can do is contact by phone or by virtual measures. So it hasn't really gone very far as yet. But we want to continue that effort and eventually get to a more refined and automated budget process and schedule, including potentially a 2-year budgeting process. That would mean we would enact one budget resolution for a 2-year period. So that would cut all of the budgeting activity approximately in half. That's the concept. Mr. Chair, committee members, that's my response to Delegate Crotty. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken, Mr. Leon, for your response. Back to the Budget and Finance Committee. Any further questions, comments? If there are no further questions, comments? From the
Chair,
Budget
this is
and Finance
Delegate
Committee?
Crotty.
Now you have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Bial, for the response. So I would ask Chair if our staff or if Legislative Council can start drafting, I don't know if it would be a legislative concern or a condition of appropriation, that our budget process then be digitized. I think we just talk about things, and there has to be some accountability. OMB also received millions of dollars for ARPA, and they definitely can modernize their system while implementing some of these ARPA projects. So if I could ask Legislative Council what could be the process, or if they could help me draft that language, and that could be ready, that could just be on the shelf when we're ready as a committee to hear that. So if I could ask Legislative Council, thank you, Chair.
Hey, thank you for your question. Mr. Pahi, are you still with us here?
Actually, Chair,
Ms.
this
Barbara.
is Ms. Bob Ross. I'm going to step in here. Thank you for the question. And yes, we will draft that legislative concern and condition of appropriation for you, and have that ready. Chair, if I could be allowed to just a couple of minutes to add to Dominic's report, I'd like to talk a little bit about the Oversight Committee budget meetings and what we're looking at there, if that would be acceptable.
Ms. Barba, go ahead. You have the floor.
Thank you. And I appreciate Dominic opening the lead. I'm going to talk really about the committee budget meetings. I am presuming that, let me say up front that the Budget and Finance Committee understands in-depthly how the budget process works and how budgets work, etc. The other oversight committees definitely do not have that expertise. So it is more of a challenge at their meetings. And last year, each committee somewhat handled their meetings differently, and it was very messy. The Office of Legislative Counsel and the Office of Legislative Services are currently working on a date for our two shops to sit down and put together a proposed budget meeting process. And we'll be doing that, I think, within the next week. And we will, of course, be talking with Mr. Bial along the way to make sure that that suggested process works for OMB. After that is done, we want to, Office of Legislative Counsel and Office of Legislative Services want to provide a training, at least to the chairs. Certainly that would be available to all delegates, So that's from the side of Office of Legislative Counsel. One of the things that, and I have discussed this with Mr. Bial, and made it, and actually even made the president aware of it. And that is, there was last year an inconsistency of the submission of indirect cost requests and carryover requests. They were not part of those unmet needs requests. They were not part of the instructions that those requests need to be submitted. Nonetheless, numerous programs took it upon themselves to submit these requests, and they came in not signed by the president. So the president wasn't aware of the unmet needs requests, and some of the committees, as you will probably require from last year, you would get unmet needs for some programs, not for all of the programs. So the fact that there was not general instructions to submit unmet needs requests signed by the branch chiefs, that created a lot of inconsistencies. Same thing happened with carryovers. So we are going to try to, Office of Legislative Service, Office of Legislative Counsel, and OMB are going to try to coordinate so we get a standardized system. And I just wanted to let the Budget and Finance Committee know that we are working in that direction, that we will have that system designed and training available for at least the chairs before the committee meetings start. That's all I wanted to add, Chairman Hino and Budget and Finance Committee, and thank you for allowing me the opportunity.
Thank you, Ms. Barbaugh, for your input into this discussion. With that, back to the committee, Budget and Finance Committee, Delegate Member Kenneth Bakrati, on your question to the Legislative Council. Does that, you have any follow-up?
Thank you, Chair. That answers my question. I'll move forward with that action. Thank you.
Thank you for that. With that, Budget and Finance Committee members, any further questions, comments? Then I'll call for the question to accept the report. Ramona, if you would lead us in a roll call vote.
Sure, Chairman Hino, roll call vote on accepting the report. Honorable Raymond Smith Jr., how do you vote? Honorable Raymond Smith Jr., how do you vote? Honorable Jimmy Yellowhair, how do you vote? Honorable Jimmy Yellowhair, how do you vote? Honorable Amber Kenneth Bakrati, how do you vote?
This is Delegate Crotty. I vote green. Thank you.
Thank you, Shadeja. Honorable Amber Kenneth Bakrati votes green. Honorable Nathaniel Brown, how do you vote?
Delegate Brown votes in favor.
Thank you. Honorable Nathaniel Brown votes in favor. Honorable Elmer P. Begay, how do you vote? Honorable Elmer P. Begay, how do you vote? Honorable Raymond Smith Jr., how do you vote? Thank you. Honorable Elmer P. Begay votes green. Honorable Raymond Smith Jr., how do you vote? Honorable Jimmy Yellowhair, how do you vote? Chairman, we have 3 members voting in the affirmative.
Delegate Yellowhair votes green.
Thank you. Honorable Jimmy Yellowhair votes green. Chairman, we have 4 members voting in the affirmative, 0 opposing, chairman not voting, and 1 member not voting. Chairman?
Okay, thank you for the roll call vote. 4 in favor, 0 opposed, and chair not voting. So thank you, Mr. Bial, for being on the call with us this today. So let's move forward To the next item on the agenda is item D, update on the ARPA Hardship Assistance Program, presented by Ms. Elizabeth Begay, interim controller for the Office of Controller. And I did hear Mr. Gerald Shirley on the line also too. I'll call upon Ms. Elizabeth Begay. Are you here with us? Our Madam Controller, Elizabeth Begay. Okay, then let's move forward to Mr. Gerald Shirley.
Thank you, Chairman Henio, and good morning or good afternoon, everybody. I'm going to go ahead and keep the updates pretty short. I want to basically review that we did an ARPA technical drive back in Kienta on the 23rd, 24th, and 25th of this month. And then from our view, that turned out to be a relative success. We were able to return a lot of return checks before the expiration dates. And then for this week, we are also planning an event at the Twin Arrows Casino beginning on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. And we're hoping to, we're planning that technical drive there in that location because it's basically to target the Southwest Agency area, meaning like Delcon, Winslow, because we do have a lot of recipients. And also the location is ideal for a lot of the Western Agency folks, especially the ones out in Flagstaff, to come to Twin Arrows as well. And as my staff informed me too, we still have a lot of Phoenix individuals calling, and we've told them about the Twin Arrows event, and they will be attending as well. Despite the distances, what we notice is that Phoenix people are coming up. We've had a number of them come up to the Kienta Technical Drive, and they are still coming up to Windrock as well. After the Twin Arrows event, we're also planning tentatively right now for the Albuquerque location, and we're looking at the week of the 21st, 22nd, and 23rd. We're still trying to determine a location that's going to be viable for a large number of people that we expect. So right now, the tentative location is going to be Albuquerque Public School location, that in a facility basically, because we're working with NHA on that. So we're hoping to get word sometime this week. Also, I indicated too, well, it was indicated that we're also planning for a Phoenix location, but the date has yet to be determined and location has yet to be determined as well. One of the things that we emphasized in the Phoenix visit is that we have a large enough location so that we can have people inside to keep them relatively cool and away from the heat. But one of the things we also emphasize that it's a must that we must have security there or police presence in order to control the crowd. So that's what we're looking at right now. And also the controller wanted me to update as well on terms of the check recipients. Our checks have been paid out. So far, she said that we've paid out a lot of the carryovers from the CARES Act, or the recipients who were paid out under the CARES. We paid out a majority of them. The only ones remaining are those individuals who have a shared CIB, and we're currently working with the Vital Records Office to, I guess, find a solution regarding that. Given that Vital Records is very busy right now, it's been a challenge to get together with them to resolve this issue. Thank you. That's it for my report. If you have any questions, don't hesitate.
We thank you for the report. Shenandoah Budget and Finance Committee, is there a motion to accept the report?
Delegate Begay. Motion.
Shenandoah Delegate Elmer P. Begay motions. Is there a second?
Delegate Yellow Hair.
Shenandoah Delegate Jim Yell here, second. So we do have a motion and a second in place. So this, are there any questions for Mr. Shirley? Are there any questions for Mr. Gerald Shirley? Not deny.
Henio, this is Delegate Cardi.
Shenandoah Delegate Emerson Esmacardi, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I received the report. How many individuals are we now waiting on with the duplicate CIBs? Thank you.
Okay, yes, thank you for that question. I did hear Vice Chair Smith in the background.
Delegate Begay here.
Kashin Shenandoah, Delegate Elmer P. Begay, you have the floor.
Yeah, now that the control is Mr. Shirley down for the report. I have a question on the Twin Arrows, the Ninigay.
So there's a lot of people that I guess change of address here. So so give me the date. Maybe if you have any the date of those when they can be at Tornado. If there's a flyer, maybe you could share it with us. I can I know share it with my chapters. So yeah, and I just keep you. Sure, thank you.
Thank you, they'll get Elmer PV that back to Mr. Shirley. Response.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for the questions. In regards to the number of individuals that have yet to be paid because of the shared CIBs, there's roughly 1,000 right now. So we're hoping to get that, again, like I had indicated, resolved as soon as we can, but we understand there's challenges with vital workers. And they also have deadlines and goals to meet as well. So we're hoping to get that within the next 2 months. And for Elmer Briguet's question, the event is going to be this basically starting this Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. And a flyer was also sent out, and one of my lead team members, Wallace James, also sent out the information to the chapter houses as well too. So, and it's going to basically, one of the things I want to indicate too, because there is a time difference, that it's going to be from the 23rd through the 25th from 9 to 4 Mountain Standard Time. And I want to repeat, Mountain Standard Time. Thank you.
Okay, Kayla, thank you for that response back to the committee. So with this, Budget and Finance Committee, any further questions, comments?
Chair Henya, this is Delegate Crowdy with the question.
You have the floor.
Yes, thank you, Chair. And I did hear that part regarding vital statistics and their capacity. What I'm looking for is then how is management, what is the plan then to reach out to those 1,000 relatives who are waiting on their checks? We continue as leadership to receive requests. Some of them are from out of state, out of country. Is there a plan to call those individuals? What's the case management, or how are you providing opportunities for individuals to get updated information if they're not able to make it to the Tuba City, or the Twin Arrows or other events that are being planned? That's what I continue to look for. And if that's above what you can make those decisions on, that's why we need the acting controller on this call. And I do still need to see her contract, Chair. There should be a provision in there in providing timely, adequate, effective services. And while we've been able to, the Hardship Office has been able to decrease the number to 1,000, there's still no indication on how they're going to provide this input or provide updates to those 1,000 individuals who've been waiting for hardship checks since, let's see, we're in month 7 for 7 months. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Kayla. Thank you for the question. Any further questions, comments, committee members?
This is Delegate Yellowhair. To the chairman. Okay, this is for Ron Duncan. There was a duplicate the census number. There was
Hold on. Delegate Yellowhair, hold on. If you're not asking Mr. Shirley a question, let me see if Mr. Duncan's on the line first before you ask that question. Mr. Ronald Duncan, are you on the call? Mr. Ronald Duncan? Ron Duncan, are you on the call? Third call. No, it's not that. Delegate Yellowhair. Mr. Duncan's not on the call with us.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. I guess I can wait. I was going to ask him, since he's taking care of the census, nobody's census department. This was direct information that we're trying to ask Mr. Duncan.
Magushina. So with that, I'll defer back to Mr. Shirley. Response to Delegate Amber Canas Bakrati.
Thank you, Chairman Henio. Yes, we are reaching out to those individuals who are out of state because we do recognize the fact that, you know, a lot of these return checks also they did number in the thousands for the people out of state. We're talking about people living in Texas, Montana, and New York as well. So we have been reaching out to them the best we can. You know, we've also stepped up our efforts as well to answer as many of the emails that we do get as well, because we have emails being forwarded from, you know, the respective council delegates and also from OPVP as well. And again, the challenge we're having is basically allocating the resources, meaning the staff, to do a number of things. One is answering phone calls, reaching out in emails, and also at the same time handle queries that when people do come to the Windrock office and to the Twin Arrows this week. We do recognize that challenge there, and we are trying to hire more people in regards to that as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shirley, for your response. Back to the Budget and Finance Committee, Shananta. Any further questions, comments? Any further questions or comments for Mr. Shirley? Tanoya, if there are no further questions or comments, we'll call for the question to accept the report.
Chairman.
Ashnada, Delegate Yellowhair, do you have a question?
Okay, stop unmuted. Anyway, I was calling for important to Mr. Ron Duncan that since he's unavailable, now anybody from the census also on the line, Chairman. That's my request, Chairman.
Kushina, Delegate Yellowhair. Mr. Ronald Duncan or staff from the Vital Statistics Office, or is there anybody on the call? Mr. Ronald Duncan or staff from Vital Statistics? Third and final call for Mr. Ronald Duncan or any staff member from Vital Statistics. Attention on that, Delgila here. There's nobody on the call. So
okay, Nana. Okay.
Kushina, with that, do you have a question for Mr. Shirley?
Somebody muted me. After.
I can hear you. Delgila here. Restate your question.
Okay. What's the budget balance on the American Rescue Plan Act funds? Gerald, visited Gerald, and this is also direction to acting a controller, Elizabeth Begay. First, I say, see that the budget balance up how long year to date. Asian advocate to the chairman.
This is on the ARPA funds. Are you talking about the ARPA funds?
Oh,
Kushina. Mr. Shirley, do you have an answer for that?
Good afternoon, everybody again. Chairman Henio, I don't have an answer right off the bat because most of my focus has been basically with the ARPA team and these technical drives and also basically the processes in the background. I would leave that question to the controller because that's something she's been monitoring more closely than I have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Shirley. And also, do you have an idea of where Ms. Elizabeth Begay is at today?
Well, again, I know that she's been busy with the budget process right now because we have some unmet needs and she's been working on that right now with some other staff to get that submitted as soon as possible.
Thank you for that. I do understand that budgets are due to OMB today, and our division directors are hard at work getting their budgets together to OMB. So with that, moving forward to the Budget and Finance Committee, any further questions, comments? Tenoi, I'll call for the question to accept the report. Ramona, if you would lead us in a roll call vote to accept the report.
Sure, Chairman Hino, roll call vote on accepting the report. Honorable Raymond Smith Jr., how do you vote? Honorable Raymond Smith Jr., how do you vote? Honorable Jimmy Yellowhair, how do you vote?
I'll vote green with my follow. I'll follow with Mr. Duncan. I'll text him. Thank you, Chairman. I'll vote green on this one here. Report.
Thank you. Honorable Jimmy Yellowhair votes green. Honorable Amber Kenneth Crotty, how do you vote?
Shada, this is Delegate Crotty. I vote green. Or, I'm sorry, this is a hardship report. I vote red. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Honorable Amber Kenneth Crotty votes red. Honorable Nathaniel Brown, how do you vote?
Delegate Brown votes green.
Thank you. Honorable Nathaniel Brown votes green. Honorable Elmer P. Begay, how do you vote? Honorable Elmer P. Begay, how do you vote? Honorable Raymond Smith Jr., how do you vote?
I'll vote red. This is Delegate Begay.
Thank you. Honorable Elmer P. Begay votes red. Honorable Raymond Smith Jr., how do you vote?
Vice Chair Smith is asking to be excused for a meeting that he's at right now.
Okay, thank you, Peggy. Chairman, we have 2 members voting in the affirmative and 2 voting in opposition. 1 member excused. Chairman, there's a tie vote.
Chairman, this is Delegate Yellowhair.
Sundar Delegate Yellowhair. Delegate Yellowhair.
Yes. Excuse me, somebody mute me. That's right after I speak. I changed my vote to red, Chairman. Thank you very much.
Well, Ramona?
Yes, Chairman.
Did you get that from Delegate Yellowhair?
Yes, I did. So to recount the vote, we have 1 member voting in the affirmative, 3 opposing, and Chairman not voting, and 1 member excused. Chairman?
Okay, with that, we do have a vote. 1 in favor, 3 opposed, Chair not voting, motion fails. Okay, with that, thank you, Mr. Shirley, for providing us some information today. Let's move forward. Mr. Zwerlein, Jim Zwerlein, are you on the call with us?
Sir, I am.
Kashina, thank you. And you have the floor, sir, for a report on the veterans budget.
Thank you, Chair Henyo, and good afternoon to you, sir, and good afternoon to the committee members that are on the call today. And thank you for adding my report to your agenda. I would also like to say good morning to the veterans listening to this call and those who will listen to the recording later. My report is as much for them as it is for you. I'm going to give you an update on the Veterans Trust Fund budget for fiscal year 23. Some of what I report is going to be very hard for you to hear, but I think it needs to be said. The veterans need to know. It will make some of them upset, and they need to be upset. Please receive this report in the spirit in which it's presented. If it makes you think, if it makes you engage in meaningful conversation, if you start asking the right questions, then it will have accomplished its goal. I need to give you a bit of context for this report, so I'm going to open with a brief story. It's a little graphic, but I'll keep it at a PG-13 level. I had a stepson. He wasn't my blood, but I loved him just the same. A few years back, I found him playing with a knife, a really sharp one. I tell him, "No, son, it's too sharp and you'll hurt yourself." He starts crying and tells his mom. Mom tells me to give him the knife. I say, "He isn't old enough and it's sharp. He's going to hurt himself." She replies to me, "He's not your son. Just give it to him." So I give him the knife. Less than 5 minutes later, I see that he's cutting himself and there's blood all over. I run over to him, I take the knife and I start applying first aid. He starts screaming for me to give him back the knife. His mom hears this and she comes over. She ignores the facts that he's covered in blood and tells me to give him back the knife and reminds me it's her kid, not mine. She gives him back the knife and I continue to try to stop the bleeding. No sooner than the knife is in his hands when he starts cutting himself again. I stare in disbelief for a moment before taking away the knife one more time, now trying to stop bleeding in several spots, also while trying to call for an ambulance. At the same time, his mother's getting mad at me because I took his knife away again, and how could I let him hurt himself? She completely ignores the fact that I told her this is what he was going to do. She says, he isn't your son. You don't get to tell him no, but you still need to look out for his well-being. The ambulance comes and takes him to the hospital. I went to the hospital because I still cared about this kid, and I learned that there was severe nerve damage. He now gets to spend the rest of his life severely crippled. The moral of this story that I want you to learn is that there are consequences to actions. Everyone needs to take responsibility for their actions and learn from them so as not to make the same mistakes. When people don't want to listen to those who know best, the odds of bad things happening are increased significantly. Now, I apologize for this picture that I just painted, but I needed to illustrate a point. What I'm about to report to you looks just like that kid cutting himself over and over and not understanding that there are consequences to his actions. I'm going to report to you about the Veterans Trust Fund. For clarity, I'm mainly going to address the FY23 budget specifically and events that are unfolding, but I will reference a few very relevant things from the FY21 and 22 budget cycles that have put us where we are today. To start, at the beginning of the budget cycle, the NNVA gets a memo from OOC that lists the funding allocation for the Veterans Trust for the coming fiscal year. We got that memo this year from OOC about May 20th. You should recall the hoopla from last year surrounding how the budget was formulated. Individual veterans were, I'll use the word complaining. Veterans organizations were passing resolutions, all saying they wanted to have the budgets their way. All of them, and some delegates included, wanted to disregard Navajo Nation law in favor of what these individuals wanted.
Point of order, Delegate Cruddy.
Amber can ask about Crowdy. What's your point of order?
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to ask if you could ask the presenter to keep decorum in this committee meeting. This is a formal meeting. It's not the Jerry Springer show. And the type of scenarios that are being presented are the director's opinion and are very disrespectful to our veterans. And I will not tolerate it. Chairman, please keep the agent in order. Thank you.
Mr. Zorline, just please present your budget and what you wanted to present to the Budget and Finance Committee. You may continue.
All right, thank you, Chair. Okay, to sum this up, as a result of what happened in previous years, DOJ and OOC had to sit down and take a look at the budget allocations that were provided from OOC. They dug into the law. They found that OOC was not calculating the allocations for the budget correct. They had calculated that the allocation for the fiscal year was going to be $4,800,000 to be distributed for all 5 agencies. They started looking into this because individuals wanted the budgets to be allocated following the 50-50 formula that the Navajo Nation utilizes. They found that this formula does not apply to veterans funds. But in their continued digging, they found that the calculations that were provided by OOC were wrong. So this is going to result in a 60% decrease in the funding allocation for this year. We're going to go from $4.8 million to $2 million. As they kept digging, they found that the carryover balances may not have been legally carried over. There's verbiage in the law that states that the carryover balances do not exist, that unexpended funds are directed to become invested into the principal of the fund. So the $3 million in change that we just finished loading a few weeks back, we may have to recover that and reinvest that into the principal. That's almost a $6 million negative swing for the veteran population in financial assistance. So what I wanted to make sure that the committee heard today was that in giving the veterans exactly what they have asked for, what I have been directed to do, this is the result. A decrease of $2.8 million in available financial assistance going into fiscal year 23. A new memo that is going to be issued by the Office of the Controller on Thursday this week with that new dollar amount that will result in a truncated timeline. As you heard Dominic communicate the timeline for all of the budget schedules, the CVOs that wanted to be able to do their allocations this year are going to have no time to put their budgets together. We are going to be behind in the process, trying to take care of the Veterans Trust Fund budgets. And that's going to put us in a position. And I wanted to make the committee aware that this is no longer the fault of the NNVA. We talk decorum, and I agree. But I will not sit quietly anymore and be blamed for circumstances that are no longer mine. So I ask that this committee please be advised.
Chair, point of order, Delegate Crotty.
What's your point of order?
Thank you, Chair. Could you ask the agent to just remain with the report? Give us a written report. The opinions, this agent has given a free fall to hurt our veterans. This committee should not stand for what he's saying.
Mr. Zwerlein, do you have a written report for your report?
Yes, sir, I do.
Has that been submitted to Miss Peggy Nakai?
No, sir, I will send it right now.
Yes, please, because I mean, coming before the committee, as you're aware of past experiences that we've always sent, the presenters have always sent their information to Ms. Nakai and beforehand and given the committee ample time to review the report while the report's being presented. So with this, Mr. Zwerlein, please continue with your report on the budget.
Thank you, Chair. So I was just about to wrap it up. So with the new numbers, once I have the new memo from the Controller's Office, I will be able to give the agencies their allocations. I will be able to give them those allocations down to the CVO level. But I no longer have authority to be able to change the formulas to accommodate the 50-50 formula based on legal opinion. That I must give those formulas based on only the veteran population. And the CVOs will be able to make their budgets in accordance with those numbers. So once those numbers are released on Thursday, I am looking for guidance from this committee on what an acceptable timeline would be for those CVOs to have their budgets returned so that they can be submitted for inclusion in the budget legislations to be considered by oversight and by this committee. So with that, sir, I'm going to conclude my report so that I can finish emailing you the electronic versions. Thank you, sir.
Okay, Ken, thank you, Mr. Zwerlein, for your report. Committee members, Budget and Finance Committee, is there a motion to accept the report? Is there a motion to accept the report going once?
Delegate Yellowhair, vote motion for accept the report.
Okay, motion by Shanada Delegate Jimmy Yellowhair to accept the report. Is there a second? Is there a motion to accept the report going once? Is there a motion to accept the report going twice? Is there a motion to accept the report going 3 times? No second. So with that, let's move forward to the next item on our business. That concludes the reports.
Chairman Henio, this is Delegate Cardi.
Shanada, Delegate Karate.
Yes, thank you, Chair. If I could ask Legislative Council, what's the status of being able to review the veteran director's contract? And what would be the process to defund this position until these critical areas are addressed? Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, with that, I believe that question about the contract has been asked at Nabikia Ticket Committee previously, but maybe Ms. Barboff could give us some more information regarding that. And as far as the part two of your question, that would be during the budget deliberations that the oversight would recommend, which would the Health, Education, Human Services Committee. So, but with this, Ms. Barboff, are you still on the call, or Ms. Tapahi?
Thank you, Chair. I still am on the call. As I mentioned at NABI, if a delegate wishes to review the contract, it's in my office, and I can establish at their convenience, they can come in and review it. I had to sign a non-disclosure agreement, but with the stipulations that delegates could come in and review the contract. So I will work with Delegate Crotty to arrange that. I think she's mentioned that she would be in Window Rock this week, so we will coordinate that. As far as defunding positions, programs, etc., Chairman, you are absolutely correct. That would be something that would be addressed during the upcoming budget process. Just a reminder to delegates, and I doubt I need to remind Budget and Finance of this, but just a general reminder that while the President has line item veto authority over the budget, he cannot appropriate. So if it's not included in the budget, he can't add it. So, and we can discuss that further when we meet before the budget hearings. Thank you, Chair. Back to you.
Thank you, Ms. Barboff, for your input. With that, we'll move forward. Next item on our agenda is old business. There's none. New business. We have legislation 0075-22. Shanada, Vice Chair Carl Slater, are you on the call with us today? Shanada, Vice Chair Carl Slater, first call. Shanada, Vice Chair Carl Slater, second call. Vice Chair Carl R. Slater, third and final call. So let's move forward to item B, legislation number 103-22. Shanada, Delegate Pernell Halona, are you on the call? Shanada, Delegate Pernell Halona. Second call. Shanada, Delegate Pernell Halona, third and final call. We'll see these two cowboys next year. Go to item C, scheduling a joint meeting with the Resource and Development Committee related to U.S. Treasury funding for housing emergency rental assistance funding discussion with the Navajo Housing Authority. And I believe they had recommended July 11th at Nina, according to Peggy, but I'll give the floor to her once we establish a motion second. Is there a motion to take action on item C on new business? Is there a motion to schedule a joint meeting? First call. Is there a motion to establish, to schedule a joint meeting? Second call.
Motion, Delegate Cody.
A motion by Delegate Amber Kilasma-Crotty. Is there a second?
Second, Delegate Yellowhair.
Second by Delegate Jimmy Yellowhair. So with that, we do have a motion and second. So with this, Peggy?
Okay, thank you, Chair Henio and members of the Budget and Finance Committee. There was I believe I think I received an email message, and that email indicated that there was a joint leadership meeting that was being requested between the Budget and Finance Committee and the Resources and Development Committee related to the emergency rental assistance funding, and then also ARPA funding for housing that the Navajo Housing Authority may have received, and they wanted to have that discussion. And so I reached out to the chair and also to the legislative advisor to find out if there were any available dates, because they meet almost on a daily basis. It seems like their schedule is pretty limited, and so their available schedule anyway. So I asked them what they had available, and they suggested that July 11th would work for them. That's next Monday, this coming Monday. And so the other date was the 15th of July, but then they just settled on the 11th of July. So that's the date that's being proposed, is July 11th. And after today's discussion with the NRCS, I'm thinking that the committee wants to include that as a second item of discussion with the RDC, the funding, the $1 million that was appropriated or allocated from NRCS to the Navajo Nation, and then the status of keeping that going, I believe. And then the second item was the NRCS is wanting to know how the Navajo Nation wants to do tribal consultation with them. I believe those were the items that were mentioned from the NRCS's report. To come up with a solution on those issues. So, Chair.
Kashina Kiala, thank you for that background information on this subject. So back to the committee, Budget and Finance Committee. For the motion, the second party, Delegate Amber Kilasma-Crotty and Delegate Jimmy Yellowhair. Recommendation by RDC is July 11th, 2022, next Monday. So with that, would that be part of your motion? Delegate Amber Kilasma-Crotty.
Sorry, I was muted. Yes, Chair. Thank you.
Katrina, and thank you for that. As a Delegate Jamil here, do you concur?
Chairman.
Katrina, we do have a motion and a second specifying the date, which is July 11th, 2022. Peggy, was that what time? Did they specify time?
I believe that most meetings are around 10 o'clock.
Okay.
And the other thing I forgot to mention was that I checked with the NHA to see if they were available, and they are.
Gashina. Okay, let's recommend maybe I guess 10 o'clock or 9 o'clock to begin with, and then let the committee know it's email Peggy.
Which time do you prefer?
Shananta, Delegate Amber Canas-Bacarati, you're holding the main motion at 9 or 10 o'clock. Shananta, Delegate Amber Canas-Bacarati, with your motion, 9 or 10 o'clock. Okay, I believe their signal might be compromised. Yeah, I could barely hear her.
Should we go with 9 o'clock?
Let's do 9, and then if there are any changes with the RDC, then we can go 10.
Okay, thank you.
Kashina, are there any questions, comments on the motion second for the joint meeting with Resource and Development Committee? Denoya, Ramona, if you would leave the roll call vote.
Sure, Chairman Hingo. Roll call vote on approving the date. Honorable Raymond Smith Jr., how do you vote? Oh, I'm sorry, Honorable Raymond Smith Jr. is excused. Honorable Jimmy Yell here, how do you vote?
I'll vote green.
Thank you. Honorable Jimmy Yell here votes green. Honorable Amber Canas-Bacarati, how do you vote?
This is Delegate Crotty. I vote green. Thank you.
Thank you. Honorable Amber Canas-Bacarati votes green. Honorable Nathaniel Brown, how do you vote?
Delegate Brown votes in favor.
Thank you. Honorable Nathaniel Brown votes in favor. Honorable Elmer P. Begay, how do you vote? Honorable Elmer P. Begay, how do you vote?
I vote green.
Thank you. Honorable Elmer P. Begay votes green. Chairman, we have 4 members voting in the affirmative, 0 opposing, 1 member excused, and Chairman not voting. Chairman?
Thank you for the roll call vote. 4 in favor, 0 opposed, Chair not voting. So we have established our joint meeting. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is close of business. Close the session, written announcements. I didn't see any written announcements. So with that, is there a motion to adjourn?
Delegate Yell here, motion to adjourn.
Motion by Delegate Jimmy Yell to adjourn. There's a second.
This Delegate Brown, I'll second.
Delegate Nathaniel Brown, second. Motion, there's a motion and second to adjourn at 2:05 p.m. And next meeting is July 12th, next Tuesday. Reason being is because the following week is the summer session. So with that, motion to adjourn. Ramona, a roll call vote to adjourn.
Yes, Chairman Hinyo, roll call vote to adjourn. Honorable Jimmy Yell here, how do you vote?
I vote green. Thank you.
Thank you. Honorable Jimmy Yell here votes green. Honorable Amber Canas-Bacarati, how do you vote? Honorable Amber Canas-Bacarati, how do you vote? Honorable Nathaniel Brown, how do you vote?
Delegate Brown votes in favor.
Thank you. Honorable Nathaniel Brown votes in favor. Honorable Elmer P. Begay, how do you vote?
I vote green.
Thank you. Honorable Elmer P. Begay votes green. Honorable Amber Canas-Bacarati, how do you vote? Chairman, we have 3 members voting in the affirmative, 0 opposing, 1 member not voting. Chairman?
Thank you. 4 in favor, 0 opposed, Chair not voting. With this, we are adjourned. Thank you for being here, Shananta, Budget and Finance Committee, and Peggy and Ramona and all our presenters today. Thank you, Shananta, Delegate Odoso, Shananta, Delegate Eugene So for being on the call with us today. Have a good, safe afternoon, and it's raining again here in Window Rock. really good to see that rain again.
Thank you, Chair and members of the Budget and Finance Committee. Hahala, when can you sign the memo for the joint meeting?
I'm here at Steno right now. If you want to bring it over.
Okay, I'll just give me a couple of minutes and I'll develop it and I'll bring it over. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll be here for 30 minutes.
Goshi, thank you, everyone. See you later.